Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Backline Report. My name is Carlos Torres, and every week, my co-host Fred Altvater and I get together and check in on the world of golf to bring you the latest news, insights, analysis, interviews, recaps, reviews. And we cover anything and everything golf. In other words, if it happened in golf or it will happen in golf, we will have it for you. But this week we have a very special edition because it's major championship week again. This time with the U.S. Open that is going to be played at Wingfoot, and the guys are going to be there trying to play and see who's going to be the worst score. No, I'm sorry, it's the best score, but the worst looking best score ever because it's going to be nasty, and we have all for that. But we have to bring reinforcements as usual for the major championships, and Kieran Clark, the European golf guru, is with us. So, Kieran, hi, how are you?
Well, I'm very well, Carlos, and thank you for having me on the show as always. And of course, as you say, we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Obviously, recapping the ANA Inspiration from last weekend, a truly remarkable finish there we saw at the Dinah Shore tournament course at Mission Hills, and of course, building up to the US Open. But there's so many other things to talk about as well, and fascinating stories, great stories indeed, like Stewart Cink winning again on the PGA Tour after 11 years. Victories all across the world, European Tour, etc. And of course, there's a few controversies in there naturally as well. But the US Open this week, obviously, is going to be a true blockbuster, guys. I think this is one of the truly great quintessential US Open venues. If you think the US Open's kind of lost its step in recent years, not been quite the same as it used to be, well, I think Wingfoot is going to deliver a US Open for the ages. It's going to be truly fascinating to watch. As you say, Carlos, it's going to be brutal, tough, a grind for a lot of the guys. But that's kind of what you expect, isn't it? That's what you sign up for in the US Open. So I think we're going to get that in spades. So I can't wait for that, and I can't wait to talk about it tonight.
All right, let's get to it. And Fred Altvater, hi, how are you this week?
Hey guys, great to see. Excited that Kieran's here this week to help break down the second major championship of the year. Boy, that sounds funny. In September, we'll be playing the U.S. Open, doesn't it? Plus, I'm looking forward to a full week of golf next week myself, playing a couple tournaments. Wingfoot should provide a stern test for the world's best players. Hopefully, it won't be a drudge to watch the hacking and gnashing of teeth over the harsh USGA conditions. I sometimes do not enjoy that, but we'll see. Like Kieran, I'm excited to watch. Let's go. Main stories this week, Mirim Lee used her wedge wisely to win the ANA. 47-year-old Stewart Cink won again, as Kieran mentioned, after 11 years. It's time for the second major of the year, the U.S. Open. So we got Kieran here. That's exciting. Let's get to it. Let's go.
Let's get to it right away. And let's start with the major. Okay, Mirim Lee earned her first LPGA title and first major championship title in a playoff at Mission Hills and Country Club in Rancho Mirage, California. She made an eagle 3 by chipping in on the final hole of regulation at the Dinah Shore tournament course, finishing on 15 under along with Nelly Corda and Brooke Henderson. Now, in the playoff, Lee was the only player to make birdie on the par 5 18, earning the win and the major title. She won $465,000 of the winner's share for of the $3.1 million purse. But everything, unfortunately, I mean, what should have been a great celebration for Mirim Lee has been overshadowed by a controversy, and we're going to get right to it because this has been the talk of the week, okay? She secured her spot in the playoff with that incredible chip in on the 18. I mean, then she celebrated. It was funny the way that she celebrated jumping into Poppy's pond. I mean, I got to give it to Matt Gelsix, her caddy. That belly flop, I mean, I gave him a 9.5. It was amazing.
I beat you. I gave him an 11. I was going to rate that actually at the end of my comments. I beat you on that. I give him an 11.
Yeah, well, that goes over the 10. So it was so good. He had the highlight, I guess, of the whole week. But anyway, again, that controversy comes after the officials decided to build a structure between the 18th green and the lake. It was an attempt to replicate the stand that would normally hold fans. Now, it meant that players could attack the green without the risk of the ball rolling into the water. Now, instead of getting a free drop, instead they would get a free drop if their shot would hit the blue wall. And Matt Gelsix admitted, hey, that's our play. So she did. She was able to chip in, make the eagle, and get into the playoffs. So, Fred, how about? I'm gonna start with you. I know you wanna, and Kieran as well would are dying to get into this one. So, Fred, I'm gonna give you the first shot at it. What do you think about this controversy? Is it getting out of hand? Is it justified? What's your take on it?
Well, two things. So let's go back to the Marathon Classic, okay? And remember Lydia Ko attempting to go for the green on the 72nd hole there, and her ball rolled over the edge and back up by the cart path. It didn't come back down that little hill. Normally there would have been stands there, okay? And it would have bounced off the stands, rolled back down to the bottom of the hill, and been a much easier chip shot. She probably would have been able to carry that off and probably would have won. So they didn't put stands up there, and it was her error for making that. Now, with this, there's water back there. So they want them going for the green in two. They want these ladies to be taking that risk, especially down at the end of the tournament. So they talk about, well, a 5-wood was too much, a 4-iron was not enough. Well, what's wrong with a hybrid? What about a 4 hybrid? Now, that probably would have been about perfect. It would have got a little higher, might have been able to hit in the front there and roll up on the green. The members don't have a wall back there all the time. Why did we have to have a wall for these women? I understand the excitement effect. You know, during this COVID, we're getting used to seeing no stands. We're getting used to seeing the whole course. I kind of would have liked to have seen it with no wall, but they got exactly what they wanted, didn't they? They got Mirim Lee bouncing it off of there, going for it, chipping it in. Erased a 2-shot. She was behind by 2 shots, 2-shot deficit. Gets in the playoff, wins on the first extra hole. So they got exactly what they wanted with it. But I don't know, being an old guy and, you know, kind of wishing things would stay the way they should be, maybe not a fan.
How about you, Kieran? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think it's complicated. So I think
I know, Kieran, with you, everything is complicated.
Of course, I'm a very complex person. Actually, you know, I was once told years ago that I was a complex person with a charming personality, which makes me sound like a serial killer, but I'm not actually, I can assure you. But yeah, you know, it was interesting. I think there's 2 things to it. You know, one, it's the same for every player in the field. Every player had that option to play that backstop, if you like, to play that aggressive shot, to go over the water, to essentially play it safe. So everyone, it was the same situation for everybody. The environment was the same, so it is consistent in that respect. But I don't like it whatsoever. I don't like it anyway. You know, I've always felt that hole is somewhat ruined by having the hospitality pavilion behind the green, which would normally be, and they attempted to replicate that with this rather contrived looking wall behind the green, which would be the equivalent of going to Augusta National and going to the 15th and putting a wall behind the green there. You take out you remove the risk from that second shot, and you make it easier for the players. And while that might, in some respects, encourage more aggressive play more consistently, it doesn't really reward great play. And I think that's the difference. And that compromises, in some respects, the finish of that hole. But that said, it was the same for every single player in the field, so we can't say it's undeserved or anything like that. But I think it's unfortunate where it's bad enough when there's a hospitality pavilion there, but there's a reason for that being there. You're there, you're trying to entertain the fans, the sponsors, etc. So there's a reason for that structure to be there. Still don't like it, still don't think it should be there. But this particular wall, there's no reason for it to be there apart from advertising. And I'm sure the ANA loved having their branding and their banner on display there in the final hole, but made it somewhat absurd. And I think it's a shame because it was a fantastic leaderboard. So many great players up there, so many great stories, and there was some fantastic golf played. There was a great back and forth with Nelly Korda and Brooke Henderson. Mirim Lee, obviously was still there, producing some remarkable short game shots, free chip-ins in the end on the 16th, and then of course on the 18th for that eagle. Admittedly, there was a degree of good fortune to that because that ball was going to run for miles beyond the hole had it not gone in. So there was a degree of good fortune there. But obviously it's taking your opportunities, and she certainly did that. But it's a shame because the way it finished with Brooke Henderson's ball going underneath the structure, leading to a real delay, and Nelly Korda was there trying to close out the win, and she's one of the fastest players in the game. And she had to really, wait for a prolonged period for no fault of her own. That was unfortunate. Wasn't a great look. And then you had almost as absurdly, Catherine Kirk, her ball landing on this little advertising board right on the edge of Poppy's Pond, which, as far as I can tell, having looked back at previous years, that has never been there before. And that ball would have gone in the pond had it not been there. But it was a structure, one that she couldn't stand on, otherwise it probably collapsed. And that led to another absurd situation. So you have one of your premier events on the LPGA Tour, the A&E Inspiration. It's essentially the LPGA's version of the Masters. It's an iconic venue. We go back there every single year. And it just made it seem a bit absurd. And that's not how you want to conclude a major championship. One particularly that was so compelling to that point. So no, I think it was a misguided decision to have that structure there. I hope in future that they find some alternative to place a hospitality pavilion somewhere else. But I know there isn't much room around that green. But you have an island green, basically, and you remove half the danger. That seems incredible to me. It always has been on that hole, but there's no reason to have that structure there at this time. And I think that was unfortunate. That said, it shouldn't take away from Mirim Lee's victory. Tremendous victory there. Incredible short game shots, as I said. She took advantage of that situation and grasped opportunity and won it outright in the playoff. Whereas the other two obviously were kind of floundered on that playoff hole. Obviously, it's unfortunate for Nelly Korda, and there's a degree of anger from some people. I know Justin Thomas has come out on Twitter and social media and said that it cost her the win and it was a disgrace and things like that. And that was a view that I saw quite commonplace on Sunday evening on social media. Not that you should always read things on social media and take them literally, but it was a prevailing view that people really wanted Nelly to win, and they felt that the way the hole was structured in that wall, that impacted her. That said, she played that 18th hole twice on Sunday and didn't birdie it either time, and that's why she lost. It wasn't necessarily because of the wall, she just didn't birdie the hole. So had she done that, then it would have been academic anyway. So it was a complicated situation, but one that I think is unfortunate because it has somewhat overshadowed Mirim Lee's victory, and it's also somewhat overshadowed what was actually a very compelling major championship. So I think the LPGA and the A&E Inspiration and all the organisers of that event will be disappointed that we're talking about this and not talking about a great final round and a great leaderboard and exciting finish. We're talking about how artificial structures on golf courses, in this particular case, the final hole of a major, may have had an impact on the result. And that's not really great for the game. But that said, as Fred touched on, I mean, players on tour, you go and play a golf course that the tour players play, it's not quite the same without the grandstands. I mean, they get so many breaks. Balls hit grandstands, they get drops, they find their balls much easier than we would play a golf course that's essentially naked, has been dressed up for an event. And we've seen examples in the past of players using grandstands and backstops. I remember Arjun Atwal doing so. I think the Wyndham Championship must be about 10 years ago now, where he took a shot right at deliberately aimed for the grandstand, knowing he would get a drop there and it would be easier up and down and potentially coming up short. So things like that, it's smart strategy on their part, taking advantage of it. But is it really what the game should be about? Yes, in normal circumstances, there's a reason for these structures to be there for fans, but in this particular case, there were no fans. So it seemed to me to be an ideal opportunity to show that hole how it should be played. As I say, it's the equivalent of having the 15th at Augusta with a big barrier beyond the green, which would seem absurd. And it's equally absurd to have the same at the Mission Hills course. That said, that's unfortunate, but it shouldn't take away from a fantastic victory from Mirim Lee and indeed some very good performances. It's a shame that we're talking about it, but I think it's a decision that the organisers will probably now regret having made.
I'm going to take a different stand on this. I think everybody's just blowing this out of proportion because like you mentioned at the beginning of your statement, Kieran, it was the same for everybody. She didn't do anything different, anything out of the rules. She played with it. They said, and Gilsick said it, their plate was to hit the middle of the green, let it run into the blue thing and get a free drop. He said it. That was nothing wrong with that. If the structure is there, I'm going to take whatever it is. Why nobody else did it? It's their own problem. He said, without that being there, they would have probably lay out because none of those long clubs were going to hold the green. It was too firm. So it was the play. Now, she had to chip in for eagle. Nobody's crediting her for that either. That wasn't an easy shot. She made it. She made it. So if she wouldn't have made it, she wouldn't have made the playoff. And how in the world can somebody assure me that Nelly Collier was going to win the tournament? Brooke Henderson was tied too. I mean, what the heck is going on, people? Just relax. It's like when Bill Belichick takes advantage of any rule, it's the same thing. Oh my God, look what he did. Isn't the rules. It was there. The grandstands would have been there anyway. That the wall was bigger, yeah, but anyway, there was going to be something there. She used it. Everybody could have used it. They didn't. Their loss. Okay, but still she had to go there, and she was the only one to birdie the extra hole. Nobody else did. So there's nothing to fault on Mirim Lee. I think this is just a big mess out of nothing. They are just trying to drown themselves in a glass of water, really. That's nothing happening here. She did it. They're taking away from a first win, first major championship from Mirim Lee. She played to win. She did what she had to do, and she had the skills to do it. Nelly didn't do it. I was pulling for Brooke, not for her or for Manelli. I was really pulling for Brooke. But, hey, she didn't win, and I'm not here crying out, oh, my God, that big wall there, and look at what do. That's why I wore blue today. Same thing, in honor of that wall. But anyway, it reminds me also of Miguel Angel Jimenez. It's not the same thing when he was on the road hole in the Open in 2010, that he had the wall in the back and he hit the ball against the wall, and then it was amazingly into the green. A great shot. Hey, he used the wall. That's what he's there for,
Yeah, but
so
that wall's there. That wall's been there for hundreds
it does
of
it,
years.
and
It's
there
not
would have been
artificial.
a stance there as well. So it's the same thing. They're just saying that because there's no fans, the stance shouldn't be there. You're trying to recreate the hole as if it would have been there. There's no. What if they then would have put the stands there with nobody? It would have been the same thing,
No
And
matter what, it's a great deal for the LPGA because they're getting all this great publicity and press, and you're getting people all excited and they're talking about the LPGA. So it's all good for the LPGA, no matter what. But if you're a golf purist, you'd like to see the course played the way it was designed. But yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. They all could do that, but it would have been nice to see it without it.
again, then put the stands next year if there's no players there. I
I'd
mean,
like to
no
see it put them
fans.
on the other side of the water.
Well, I don't know. If they wanted it the way that it was, they should have put the stands in. That's all. But anyway, any comments?
Put those cardboard cutouts like they do in Major League Baseball. That'd be cool.
Yep, and sound and all that.
Yeah, all
Piping
the sound.
so
Yeah.
anyway. But anyway, any final words on this? I mean, I think, lost in all this, Brooke played really well. Uh, um, Nelly as well. We also saw Lexi Thompson, who also plays exactly as advertised here. She had her chance as well, just fell short. Lydia Ko had a good outing. I mean, who else you want to comment about before we close, Fred?
The only thing I want to say is that I only give Mirim about a 7.5 for her jump because it was pretty obvious she didn't really want to do that. She just kind of stepped up the edge and just kind of fell in. But I have to give her caddy 11 out of 10 for that magnificent belly flop with full extension and maximum water displacement. That was a thing of beauty. So.
Yeah, Miriam then said that, she usually is not afraid of the water, but that she looked at it and it looked a little deep. What's wrong? Anyway? Kieran, how about the rest of the field there at the ANA?
Well, as you touched on, Carlos, it was a fantastic leaderboard and it was a great event. I just think that the end, it could have been better. It was a shame that we're talking about it. And, it's not quite the same. You can't really compare the wall, the road hole to this temporary structure. The wall, the road hole is a a part of the golf course. It's an integral part of the course, whereas this wall is just something that someone's put up out of a whim. So I think that's unfortunate. So no one's criticizing Mirim Lee for taking advantage of it. She deserved to win. She was fantastic. She chipped in. It was an amazing shot, amazing moment. One of those great major championship moments. It was very reminiscent of even Jeff Ogilvy winning the US Open back at Winged Foot 14 years ago, or indeed Craig Perks at the Players Championship years ago. He chipped in everywhere in the final stretch there. So a fantastic win. But I just think that it was a little bit too contrived having that there. But I would always be critical of that hole for that finish. I think the grandstand has always been very silly in that position where I see you have an island green and you compromise that island green by having a structure added to it. I just don't quite get it. So I think it's unfortunate. But as you say, it's the same for everybody. And she took advantage of that. And I have to say also that, listeners and viewers, 7 years of the Back Nine report, and I've never seen Carlos quite so fired up as he was there. I mean, that was astonishing. I mean, it's usually Carlos is a very temperate, very calm. He's a calming influence on Fred and myself. But tonight, I think I have to rein him in a little bit here. He's a bit unruly. So remarkable behaviour. But no, it was a great major victory. And Mirim Lee, another fantastic player from South Korea. What a legacy. Go back to Siri Pak winning majors back in the late 90s and all the players that have followed her. Just another one on that stage. Fantastic win, a great leaderboard, a memorable finish. It's one we will not forget, that's for sure. But there was a lot to unpack. And if that sets us up, for this week's upcoming men's major championship, then we could have 2 weeks that are going to be really, really interesting. So it was an intriguing event, intriguing finish, and one that I say we're left us with many talking points. And I guess in that sense, it was a good result, because obviously if you're talking about something, then it was obviously interesting. And certainly the finish to the A&A this year was memorable.
Hey, one of the bets in Vegas is how is the USGA going to mess up the US Open. So, it's bets are being taken. We'll see what happens. So maybe something like this will come up. We'll see. But anyway, let's move on to the guys on the PGA Tour, where Stewart Cink earned his first PGA Tour win in 11 years, and that was a victory at the Silverado Resort in Napa, California. He had his son in his back. He's 47 years old, and he shot a second successive 65 to earn a 2-shot win over Harry Higgs at 21 under. Now, a final hole birdie secured his win really there, because Higgs could not hole out for eagle on the par 5 finish, and Brian Studdard couldn't make 2 straight eagles. He would have to do that to tie him. Doug Redman, Ches Reavie, Kevin Streelman, and Brian Studdard all finished tied for third at 18 under par. Cink won the $1.188 million winner's share of the $6.6 million purse, and also now he earned 26 official world golf ranking points, which should boost his world ranking and get him status maybe until he's eligible for the PGA Tour Champions. Now, the other thing is that he also earned 500 FedEx Cup points with the win, which will get his season off to a great start and give him a good chance to possibly, make it to the Tour Championship.
Yeah, at 47 years old, this really sets him up transitioning right into the Champions Tour, right? And Stewart's still obviously a very good player. So when he gets to the Champions Tour, he could be a real factor there in a couple of years. So, with the exemptions he's got, like you say, he moved up the world rankings, he's going to get all the perks again. We had Phil in the field. He was tuning up for Winged Foot this week. He ended up 10 under par, which was only good for T44. But, he got some good rounds and he got some practice in. Wildfires, we're hearing all about it in Oregon and all over the place, and Northern California. You could see the glow there, the smoke. It didn't create a problem, but talking to our daughter-in-law out in Portland today, said they can't really go outside because the smoke is so heavy they can't breathe. They have an older house. The smoke comes in through the windows a little bit. They've got some purifiers going and things to try and help breathe. So that's an issue out there right now, and it's unfortunate. It didn't affect this championship, but it very well could have. Great runner-up for Harry Higgs, like you said. Really sets him up for this year. Redmond has been, Doc Redmond, steadily improving. Reavie always seems to be solid. Reeve, I didn't even look to see if Reeve's in the U.S. Open. I'm assuming he is, but he's a guy who hits straight enough. He could actually do pretty well at Winged Foot. Kevin Streelman has been playing very well since return, and Brian Stewart seems like he pops up a couple times every year. He's right from here in Michigan, actually a Michigan guy. Pat Perez had a good week. T9. There's a name we haven't talked much about lately. Ash K. Bhatia. It has been a long, tough stretch for Bhatia since turning pro at the age of 18 last year after the Walker Cup. Maybe he's finally getting his act together, and maybe we'll see him play a little bit better down the road, guys.
How about that, Kieran? How about the win by Stewart Cink?
I thought it was a fantastic story. Obviously, it was a family affair. Having his son Reagan on the bag, and of course having his wife Lisa following him all the way around made a great sense of family to it. And of course, people who may not know, Lisa several years ago was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, which was obviously a great shock to them at the time. And remarkably, she's in remission and recovered and in good health. But it's all been part of this journey that the Cink family have been on, really since Turnberry in 2009, and I was there for that remarkable finish when Stewart Cink was the guy that killed Bambi's mother when he defeated Tom Watson in the playoff. It could have been one of the most remarkable, probably would have been the most remarkable story in golf history. It's still up there, but Cink was the guy that kind of ruined the headlines, which is a great shame because I don't think he's ever got the credit for that win he should have. It was a fantastic victory, career-defining moment, and it was one that people were talking about the runner-up more than the winner, somewhat understandably, but you can imagine that maybe it might have irked him slightly. But that said, he is a very laid-back character, and I'm not sure too much bothers him. But it's been a great, a long wait for another victory. I say health problems for his wife, injury problems for himself, poor play, falling outside the world's top 300, barely featured in leaderboards for a long time. And then to come here and win this and win it in the manner that he did, so cool at the end, wonderful 2-putt in the last. It's a great story, and you can see at the end how grateful he is for everything that's kind of happened, and he's obviously a big family guy, so you can see how meaningful it was for him. And it was a great moment, great story, great way to begin the new, unusual season in many respects, but a great way to kick it off. And as Fred touched on there, it's something that will take Stewart into his 50s. With an exemption, so he has that transition to the Champions Tour now in place. So it's all looking up for the Cink family. So no, it was a wonderful story and one of the best we've seen for a while. So it was nice to have that feel-good tale. And I must quickly mention Harry Higgs. I actually thought was going to catch Cink. I was watching that final round, but he missed a putt on 17. Had a great shot in there, missed a putt for birdie, and then he found the fairway bunker off the 18th tee, and that pretty much cost him in the end. But he was right there. He's a real fun player to watch. I mean, he's kind of laid back, very talented, very expressive, always kind of great mannerisms. I love players who show you what they're feeling, and he does that. He gives you something, and he's got a unique sense of style too. And I have to say, I could see Fred wearing one of those deep V polo shirts that Harry Higgs wears. I think he looked very sharp in that.
Oh, I got to show off my chest here. I love to show off the chest here, yeah.
I was about to say, well, to be fair, you might have to maybe transplant some chest hair to make it look better from somewhere else, maybe on your armpits and put them there, that kind of stuff. But no, he looks good, he plays good. Didn't quite win, but I think he will very soon. But no, Carlos, Stewart Cink, fantastic story, and great to see the Cink family enjoying happier times after a period that must have been for a while incredibly concerning and full of anxiety. So it's nice to see them actually do well. It's good to see nice things happen to good people, and I think this is actually an example of that. So yeah, pleased to see.
And Harry Higgs, you mentioned him. I gotta mention, if you see his collar, that's my generational group company. So where I work for. Oh. So we're one of the sponsors for Harry Higgs. So
there you go.
Have it. So anyway, yeah, fun guy, and of course at work everybody was pulling for him to see he would pick it up. But hey, Stewart played amazing that last round, so kudos to him. Hey, by George, it's Goetzia again, and I have to say it again because it's George Goetzia winning again, who won for the first time now, this time in continental Europe on the European Tour. He had a big win at the Dom Pedro Victoria Golf Course in Vilamura, Portugal. He won by 2 shots over Laurie Cantor at 16 under, punctuating the win with a final hole par to take the title on the back of a final round of 66. Tommy Fleetwood and Joachim Lagergren finishing a tie for third place at 13 under. So Kieran Coetzee won 156,000 euros. That's a winner's share of the €1 million purse. And Coetzee seems like the hottest player right now on the European Tour.
Yeah, as you say, he won the previous week down in Pretoria in his home country of South Africa, where he's been a prolific winner for years and years. And we've seen that for a long time. I mean, you look at Charles Schwartzel, for example, Masters champion, won so many events down in South Africa. Didn't win that much out with there. Of course, he won at Augusta, that makes up for it. But, and obviously Louis Oosthuizen has been very similar to that too. So the South African players are really good on their home soil. They're not always the greatest travellers, but of course, there's been some legendary players who, of course, have disproven that theory. And Coetzee is one of those guys he's been around for a while now. And you look at his record in South Africa, how consistent a winner he's been, especially for earlier in his career. And there was potential chance of him maybe being the next Charles Schwartzel, the next Louis Oosthuizen. I mean, he had just a very, very similar winning record to them for a long time. Didn't quite find that second gear. But he's been around for a long time. He actually finished 7th at the 2015 PGA Championship at Whistling Straits. So he has got a pedigree in big events. This is his 5th European Tour sanctioned victory. Obviously, a lot of victories in the Sunshine Tour, many of those co-aligned with the European Tour. But this year, winning in continental Europe was a big breakthrough for him. A really good player, good competitor, had to kind of grind it out at the end there with those pars. Some water on those final holes at Vilamura, so there's potential for disaster if you're in the lead. But he did very well to finish it off and close it out. And as you say, Carlos, he's a prolific winner right now. He's on a hot streak, and maybe he's going to have a strong end at 2020. Maybe build on that going into next year, and hopefully we'll have a more consistent schedule. And I think the other main story of the week, Carlos, would have been Tommy Fleetwood, who added the event very late to the schedule. He actually had to come in as a sponsor's invitation. That's how late it was. He was actually too late to get into the field as an exempt player, as of course he would be. So he came in as an invite, trying to get that little bit of competitive action ahead of the US Open, where he is probably one of the outside favourites. And he played very well, finished third, looked very sharp, tee to green, ahead of the US Open. So he'll be looking forward to Winged Foot now and hoping to have a very good week. But I think the scoring is always quite low at Vilamura. Tommy finished at 13 under. I think it's fair to say, if he finished at 13 under at Winged Foot, I think he'll win the US Open, probably by a record margin. So, yeah.
I mean, if somebody scored 13 under this weekend, I mean, just proclaim him number one forever, because there's no way, no way. I mean, that'll be
the urine sample.
Records. Yeah.
Yeah, more than a COVID test. I think a few more
Exactly.
tests required for that.
Yeah, everything. Fred, how about that win by Coetzee?
Well, just want to say 2 wins in a row back to back. His world rankings are going to go up a little bit. We've seen Coetzee a little bit here in the U.S., but not winning anything, not really playing that well here. So wins down there, he wins down Portugal. Maybe the confidence gets up a little bit. Like we say, that's really the only difference for some of these guys is they need to get that little bit of confidence. So when they get in those situations, they can pull up the shot they need. And maybe this is just what he needs. Maybe we'll be seeing more and more of him all around the world.
We'll see. One man that it's recognizable anywhere that he goes on the golf world. That is the golf's most interesting man. Miguel Angel Jimenez. He topped the 2020 Sanford International Final leaderboard on the first PGA Tour Champions event, back with fans at the Minnehaha Country Club in Sioux Falls in South Dakota. He won by a shot over Steve Flesch. He had a 54-hole total of 14 under. He closed with a second 65 on the week to earn the victory. Bernhard Langer and Steve Stricker finished tied for third place on 12 under. So for MAJ, he won the $270,000 winner's share of the $1.8 million purse. He wins his 11th PGA Tour Champions title and continues to climb up the leaderboard of all-time wins on the 50-plus circuit. Of course, he has has a long way to go to Hale Irwin or Bernhard Langer for all that's left to go. But hey, Fred, good win for him. It was a stack up leaderboard, and he got through.
You gotta love Miguel Angel, right? You just gotta love him. He says they ask him when is he going to start celebrating or how is he going to celebrate? He says, I am celebrating already. He said, we already start. We have some wine here. It's my favorite drink. We have a nice cigar, Arturo Fuentes. The short period you're going to be here in this world, enjoy yourself. Wise words from Miguel Angel. You can't do any better than that. Did you see the pictures of the stands? Because there were fans there in South Dakota. A sporting event with fans. What a concept. There was a picture with about 35 fans in it, and only the whoever the photographer was took, I'm sure, the right angle that he only got about 2 masks. Nobody was wearing masks in this shot. I'm sure if you pan back and looked at the whole stands, probably at least half or 2/3 were wearing masks, but he found a section where there was only like 2 people wearing masks out of about 35 or 40 people. We can't, we're having trouble going to football games here, high school football games. They don't want to let you in. Michigan, Ohio is ridiculous still. I'm not going to get on my high horse, but I thought it was great. If nothing else, I thought that was great, that picture coming out of there. Stricker was close. It was a good tournament. A lot of good names. Another Champions Tour event. But I just thought it was great that they had fans in the stands and there weren't a lot of masks, at least in part of the stands.
How about you, Kieran? The win there by Miguel Angel Jimenez.
Well, as you touched on there, Carlos, and of course Fred, shared that eloquent quote from the great man, who obviously is a scholar, a philosopher, a man with a great message for the world.
Renown.
Well, very much so. And it's a very simple message. It's just basically enjoy yourself. And you have to say, yeah, that's not a bad idea, actually. If we all just had that philosophy and that personality and that attitude, then we'd all feel a bit better. But also he backs it up with some fantastic play. And I do think sometimes we almost forget just how good he actually is, given that we go on about how creative and how charismatic and how amusing he can be and how unique he is. But he's also an absolutely sensational player. And Carlos, you mentioned there that he's now on 10 wins in the Champions Tour. And even though he's obviously a long, long distance away from Bernhard Langer, Langer is the only European golfer who has more than Jimenez on the Champions Tour. So that's an achievement in itself. So it's a tally to get to, and I'm sure he'll add to that in the next 2 or 3 years. He's one of those guys who, Miguel, he doesn't seem to be, he's not the archetypal athlete, but he's very flexible. He knows his game very well. He's got a great attitude, and he's someone who you could just see playing well for a long time, and potentially into his 60s, because he just has that personality. He doesn't get stressed out. He doesn't put too much pressure on himself. He just goes out there and enjoys himself, and that attitude, I think, brings him rewards. So yeah, it's always fun to see Miguel win, and I say, of course, we saw recently, I think the last time I was on the show, we discussed his record-breaking appearance on the European Tour, setting a new appearance record on the circuit. So I think we can now call Miguel Angel Jimenez, not just the world's most interesting man or whatever, or the mechanic, or whatever you want to call him. I think we could also call him, the record breaker, the history maker, Miguel Angel Jimenez.
I'll look for something. Had something in mind, but I'll say it later. But anyway, yeah, it was a great win for him, and it's always fun to watch him win. And the key is into the stretching, those stretching exercises before you start. That's the key.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of people make fun of it, but hey, it works. Look how he has been able to maintain himself healthy that long career so far. But anyway, let's talk about the Korn Ferry Tour. Okay, 2 years ago, Curtis Thompson gave up playing professional golf. I mean, he had a disaster season on the Korn Ferry Tour in 2018. He lost his card, and then he said, I'm quitting the game. I'm done. He picked up then the bag for his sister, LPGA star Lexi Thompson, and got a job also at looping there at the Pine Tree Golf Club back home in Boynton Beach in Florida. Now, during that sabbatical for him, he also finished his degree. I mean, he turned pro early out of LSU into 2014. He got married. Now, you fast forward through his run on the Corn Ferry Tour's Q School, and he shared the medalist honors there with Braden Thornberry to regain his Corn Ferry Tour card. Now, this past weekend, he earned a big win at the 2020 Evans Scholars Invitational that was played at the Chicago Highlands Club in Westchester, Illinois. He held off a pair of players by one shot, finishing on 17 under. And among those players was Will Salatoris, who we know has been just playing amazing there at the Corn Ferry Tour, and also Jimmy Stanger. They were tied for second place. Max Rutloff and Brad Hopfinger and Alex Chiarella finished 2 shots out of that tie for second place, tied for fourth. Kieran, how about this win by Lexi's brother, Curtis Thompson?
Well, indeed, fantastic story. And I love these stories, and you see them so often on the Corn Ferry Tour, and indeed many of the satellite tours around in the game. Players who felt they weren't going to make it. And Fred touched on earlier about guys who they get that confidence, and that's what holds them back from achieving and fulfilling their potential. The reality is, I mean, if you play on any tour, you're an unbelievable golfer. You are in that very tiny percentage at the highest level. And it's hard to get into the even smaller percentage in the elite on the PGA Tour. I mean, that's a tiny number of players when you consider how many people around the world play golf. So to be on that level is so hard to get there. And so many come short. It's not because of a lack of skill or a lack of talent. It's just, it could be many intangibles, mentally, psychologically, confidence, just injuries. Anything can play a part. Just little bit of misfortune. And it's hard to, overcome that hurdle and get there. And, Curtis obviously has had to kind of go back to basics. He's more or less went back to, I guess you could say, a regular life in many respects. And, achieved things there, which are fantastic, obviously. Life goals he's accomplished in the past couple of years since he drifted away from the game. And I think that's probably given him the security and just the assuredness in his life to go out and play some better golf and come back with maybe a different perspective, maybe a more mature perspective. And he's now on path to fulfilling his potential. So I thought it was a fantastic story. And of course, we saw Lexi, contending at the ANA. So it could have been an incredible double, win there in the end. But obviously, one win in the family isn't too bad for the weekend. So, great story. And it'll be interesting to see now if he can actually, build on this and potentially, add more victories on the Corn Ferry. And then, of course, eventually establish himself on the PGA Tour and maybe achieve something that he didn't think was possible. And it reminds me a little bit of Sophia Popov's victory at the Women's Open at Royal Troon a few weeks ago. You're someone who had felt that she was on the verge of giving up golf. She was going nowhere. She had health problems, obviously, with Lyme's disease. And she felt, I'm talented, I'm skilled. I've played with so many of these fantastic players all throughout my life as a junior and as a young professional. They're winning events, they're winning majors, and I'm doing nothing. And then, of course, she goes and wins a major. So it just shows you what's possible. And that's, I think, we talk about majors and the world number one and guys winning FedEx Cups or CME Globes and whatnot and big money. Sometimes the best stories are about these guys who prove to themselves that they can actually do it. And I think this is another example of that. So no, I thought it was a fantastic story, Carlos.
Right. How about Curtis? I mean, he had give up for good because he had basically said, after that disastrous season at the Corn Ferry Tour, I had enough. Maybe he was going to keep, picking up the bag of Lexi. But hey, he's back. He went through the Corn Ferry Tour Q School. He got there, shared the medalist honors, and hey, it seems like it's paying back his perseverance.
Some people just have to grow up a little bit, and he had only had 8 top 10s in 103 starts on the Corn Ferry Tour. That's not very good. But he said if there's one thing he learned carrying Lexi's bag was that he needed to be more conservative, not so aggressive. You don't have to birdie every hole. He said, hey, I can hit it onto the green, 14 out of 18 holes. If I can get it within 15 to 40 feet, trust my putter. Just, take my pars, and if I happen to make some birdies, then I'm good to go. Take those pars, and you're a pro. You don't have to win every week. You just need to finish in the top 15 or 20 to make nice money. If you're on the PGA Tour, if you're top 25 week after week, you make $40 million like Charlie Howell all of a sudden. So You don't have to make birdies on every hole, and that's what these young guys think they have to do. And when you're young and you're only playing like 18-hole or 36-hole tournaments, yeah, you do have to come out fast. But when you're playing 72-hole events, it's all about staying there and being there hole after hole, day after day, week after week.
Definitely. And with that, we'll wrap up our weekend backspin. And now we're going to talk about what's going to happen this weekend. Of course, there's that little tournament called the U.S. Open that's going to be in Wingfoot, but that's going to be for us to talk to you more on the practice range. Now let's talk about the other tournaments that are going to be in the European Tour stays in Portugal for the second week in a row. Now this time it's going to be the Open de Portugal, or the Portugal Open, however you want to say it. So Kieran, how about the European Tour twice in the same place? I think that's a great idea to try to keep people on the same place and limit their traveling and maximizing their exposure minimizing their exposure to what could possibly be a COVID-19 infection.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we've seen that recently with the UK swing that the European Tour had in the late summer there through July into August. And we'll indeed see another UK swing coming up in a few weeks' time after this event here. We'll play in Northern Ireland, then they'll play in 2 events in Scotland, including one near here at the Fairmont Hotel just outside St Andrews, and then with the PGA at Wentworth. So it makes perfect sense to try and maintain players within the same environment, the same nation as long as possible, try and build up that bubble, if you like. But of course, a lot of the guys who played last week are not playing this week. Some are playing in the US Open, some are taking the week off, because this is effectively a challenge tour event in terms of the field quality. But crucially, it is dual rank, Carlos, with the European Tour. So this is a chance for a player to win this, and get a European Tour card. As we all know, due to COVID-19, no players are going to fall off European Tour this season, so it's a very limited opportunity to secure a card next year. There's going to be no Q skill, for example, which is a massive part of getting onto the main tour. So this is a chance for somebody to book their ticket onto the tour for next season. So a great chance. And there are some interesting names in there. George Coetzee, for example, he's in the field this week too, so he's potentially going for a Portuguese double, and of course possibly 3 in a row wins, which would obviously be fantastic, and you wouldn't rule it out, certainly, given the way he's played the past 2 weeks. And looking through the field as well, you have the likes of Andreas Romero, who, remember him years ago, almost winning the Open Championship at Carnoustie in 2007. He just missed out on that playoff with Harrington and Garcia that year. And I think he's also won in the PGA Tour. So he's a guy who kind of in the latter half of the, well, I guess 2 decades ago now, if you like, latter half of the first decade of the new century, he was an emerging player, didn't quite fulfill his potential. He's still playing golf in the European Tour. We also have Paul Dunn, who was a European Tour winner, and he memorably, of course, led the Open Championship as an amateur at St Andrews 5 years ago. It's really fallen away in the past couple of years, but maybe this could be his chance to get some form back and maybe recapture his past glories. I remember he beat Rory McIlroy to win the British Masters, I think, 3 years ago. So he has got quality in there somewhere, but he hasn't shown it much of late. And also in there, one notable name is Jamie Donaldson, who will give American golf fans some nightmares, because he was, of course, the guy who hit the winning shot at the 2014 Ryder Cup at Glen Eagles. Still plugging away on the tour, playing some decent golf actually of late. So who knows, could be an unexpected win for him. So as I say, Carlos, a chance here for somebody to grasp a European Tour card, potentially from the Challenge Tour. So a rare ticket to be had, but someone is going to secure, unless George Coetzee just goes and wins again, which is quite possible.
It's possible. I mean, the way that he's playing and with the confidence showing, I mean, he can certainly go three-peat. Fred, anything you want to add to the preview on the Open de Portugal?
No, I think Kieran covered it quite well there. 2 weeks, 2 continuous weeks in Portugal. Great to see. Still having some European Tour events. They got to travel outside the UK a little bit. So, like Kieran said, they're going to go back there. But no, it's good stuff.
Okay, now let's talk about the LPGA. The LPGA Cambia Portland Classic. This is played in Portland, of course, Oregon. As you all know, the wildfires right now, it's the big story there. out of concerns and for the security of the players, this has been reduced to 54 holes. And like, for example, Brooke Henderson opted out just recently because of the concerns towards that. And it's a bad, bad thing. I mean, not only COVID-19 has hit golf very badly. Now we get the wildfires here in Portland, but this is a great tournament. I mean, they played at the Columbia Edgewater Country Club, clubs that has existed since 1925. It's Parkland course. They played, at Par 72 this week. The defending champion is Perth product Hannah Green, who reached 21 under par last year, defeating American young gun Yalimi Nell by one shot. So Nelly Cordes is going to be there to play. I mean, she's set to make her Portland Classic debut this weekend. How about this tournament? We know that all these things are going on, and how about the tournament?
Yeah, they had to cut it down to 54 holes. As I told you earlier, it really is bad out there. Smoke is a real problem. And so it's going to be tough. I mean, people that are like the camera people, all the people that have to be outside there, it's going to be difficult. The smoke is really, really bad. So they didn't think the air quality was going to be good by Thursday morning. So they just went ahead and canceled Thursday's round. So also want to mention, Carlos, that got notice today that since they're not going to be playing the tournaments in Asia, they're adding a tournament at Reynolds Lake Oconee. And Reynolds Lake Oconee is a very, very wonderful golf course. I've played it a couple times, and it's right in between. Reynolds Lake Oconee is right in between Augusta National and right in between Atlanta. So it's in a great, great area. And so that's going to be held, let me see here, October 22nd.
October 22.
Yeah, 22nd through the 25th. So, and that's when, they can't be playing in Korea. They can't be playing in Japan. So, they're going to do this instead. So just wanted to get that in there as well, Carlos.
Yeah, they announced this. It's going to be the second. It's going to be called also the LPGA Drive On. So it's going to be the second Drive On championship that canceled the Asian Swing, which basically was the two tournaments, the BMW Ladies Championship and the Toto Japan Classic. Both events will return next year. But like you mentioned, they're going to be playing for those 4 days, full field. They will compete at the Great Waters course at Reynolds Lake Oconee for $1.3 million purse. So anyway, Kieran, how about that? If you want to comment on that new event that they added with the cancellation of the Asia Golf Swing, and also what's going on in Oregon, and how about the Cambia Portland Classic?
Yeah, I think that new event makes it 7 tournaments remaining, including this week on the LPGA Tour schedule in 2020. So you have, after this week, you have a couple of weeks off, and then they come back for the ShotRite Classic on October 1st. And then, of course, you have the Women's PGA Championship, where coincidentally Hannah Green, of course, is the defending champion for that, as well as this in Portland. And then, of course, later in the year, you have the US Women's Open in December, with the Tour Championship coming up right before Christmas. So it's all happening on the LPGA Tour, but they have a schedule there, a decent number of events remaining. Obviously, 2 more majors coming up before the end of the year, so there's an awful lot going on there, so a lot of excitement. It's a great time to be playing well, that's for sure. And indeed it is for the men too. I mean, this could be 6 majors for the men in just over a year, so it could be a fantastic time for both the men and women. If you can find a hot streak for 6 to 9 months, you could have a career within one season essentially. So yeah, that's all coming up ahead. Of course, this week, as you touched on, a somewhat unusual environment for the Portland Classic, obviously with what's going on around the surrounding area. Obviously, incredibly concerning what's happening there. I've seen the pictures. It's obviously horrendous and a great worry for a lot of people in that part of the US. And I say Hannah Green won this last year. And looking through the field, Gabriella Ruffles, who of course had a great performance at the ANA, just missed out in the low amateur honours, but showed her class at just 20 years old. She's in the field. She was invited to play this week. You've also got Hanako Shibuno, the former Women's Open champion from last year. And Cheyenne Woods, she's also been invited to play as well. And indeed, Sophia Popov, who I mentioned a while ago, she is in the field playing this week on the LPGA Tour. Of course, she was noted for her absence at the ANA Inspiration because her exemption for winning the Open did not kick in until next year. situation that was somewhat strange, and it, of course, led to a little bit of a contentious debate on the wonderful environment of social media amongst some learned observers. And of course, Mike Wan came out to clarify the whole situation. I still think they could have had her in the field at some point. I think they could have invited her to play in it, but that's neither here nor here. That's all in the past. So she's in the field this week. See how she builds on that win at Troon. So yeah, obviously some players missing, as you touched on, Carlos, because of the environment and what's going on around the local area. So hopefully, things do clear up, not just for the golf tournament, for people obviously living in Portland and the surrounding area, and that they have 3 good rounds at the weekend, and they have a good solid event. And hopefully that will be the case, and everyone stays safe and everyone's healthy, because obviously it's not a nice atmosphere to be in. Potentially dangerous with smoke inhalation and so on. It's just not a great air quality, so it's not nice. So hopefully that improves soon, and they have a good golf tournament this weekend too.
All right, now let's move on to the Champions Tour, where the Pure Insurance Championship impacting the first tee will be played at the Pebble Beach. That is a 54-hole golf event. It will feature 80 PGA Tour champions professionals and 80 amateur players. And again, this is played at the Pebble Beach Golf Links. It's going to be this weekend. The purse is going to be $2.1 million. The defending champions are Kirk Triplett and Sam Sommerhauser. And then the first tee juniors are Ashley Mean and Matt Ginella and Alfonso Rivera on the amateur team. So the format, they play 2 concurrent competitions. There's a professional, which is the individual, and the pro-am, which is the net best ball. The benefiting charity, one very worthy of it, is the first tee there. And the chairman is none other than Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood. So, Fred, how about this competition there at Pebble Beach?
Yeah, it's always a cool event. It's kind of the Champions Tour rendition of the AT&T Pebble Beach, the National Pro-Am, right? You've got an amateur paired with a pro. It's a great event for these junior kids, these first tee kids that get to play with these Champions Tour players. And it's also a good deal for the Champions Tour players to get to see these young kids and what they're doing, and kind of bring out the grandfather instinct there a little bit, and kind of help them along, give them some ideas. But the kids really get to see what's like to play in a pro event, be around the atmosphere, see what the pros do, and learn from them. It's a really, really good event. Kind of fun to watch. I always try to watch some of it every year.
How about that, Kieran?
I do like the idea of the grandfather instinct. I mean, I remember when the Champions Tour were in St Andrews 2 years ago for the Senior Open. I mean, they had a creche. It was never been grandfathers, they're just dads these days. I mean, they're getting younger, these Champions Tour players, at least it feels like anyway. I mean, Corey Pavin and Rocco Media, I mean, they've got some very young children. So there's life in the old dogs yet, clearly, both on and off the golf course. But yeah, a great event, obviously a chance to win at Pebble Beach. I mean, that's a moment for anyone's career. And Carlos, you mentioned Kirk Triplett, he's a 3-time winner of this event. So he's kind of he's a bit like the Mark O'Meara of this event. He's won it many times. And Jim Furyk is also in the field this week, and he's the name I'm going to pick out for, because I think we discussed him last time I was on the show in terms of him potentially becoming a force on the Champions Tour, maybe even the next Bernhard Langer. And this could be an opportunity for him to actually underline that status and prove that he is going to be a force on the senior circuit. But of course, the reason he's here is because he is in the US Open. Obviously, he won the US Open back in 2003 at Olympia Fields. And he's actually missing his first US Open since 1995. This week he'd made 24 straight appearances and had only missed 3 cuts. So he had a remarkable record in US Open, missing out this year, but he might very well make up for that by winning at Pebble Beach. I think winning at Pebble would be a fine consolation for Jim Furyk. And of course, Miguel Angel Jimenez, as I say, the record breaker, the history maker, he's in the field too. So there's a lot happening, and see the chance to win at Pebble Beach. That's a rare opportunity, and one that I think is extra special for a lot of players.
How about this tournament, Fred?
Well, yeah, like I say, it's just a good deal. Great for the kids and great for the pros as well.
All right, with that, we wrap up our forecall, our previews for this week. So, Fred, tell us a little bit about Boyne.
Hey, Boyne is running an amazing fall special. We got a couple weeks left, right? It's just through the month of September here. At their mountain resort, they're offering tee time starting from just $47 Monday through Thursday before 4 p.m. So if you don't have to work, if you got, working out of the home and you can skip out a little bit, run to the mountain up at Boyne, maybe stay the night, play a couple days, play the mountain, play the Alpine one day and the monument the next day. Both are great golf courses. Just tee off the top of the mountain, you play your way down. Fantastic stuff. $47 before 4 o'clock. Great deal. Go to boyne.com/golf, BOYNE.com/golf. Book your September golf getaway to Boyne Mountain right now.
All right, now let's go to the Par 5 news. Every week we pick 5 topics of news worth mentioning. And the first one, back in the summer, GSC Worldwide announced that they had signed Lexi Thompson, who had been repped by Blue Giraffe for her entire pro career. With that, you see that as a global movement, right? Maria Fassi is the only other LPGA player that is represented there, but that management group also counts Hulk, Bryson DeChambeau, Sergio Garcia, Paul Casey, Abe Ancer, and Louis Heising, among others, as their clients. But now Lexi Thompson took it to social media to announce the launch of her own brand. She will have her new Lexi logo. She had it on her visor and her golf bag during the ANA Inspiration. So it seems like she's getting ready to launch this new brand. So, Kieran, I'm going to bring you first. How about this move by Lexi? The Lexi logo seems like a new brand coming out.
Well, indeed. And in the promo for this new brand, she has teased some new projects, which include Lexi Golf, Lexi Fitness, and Lexi Skin. Intriguing. And, interesting to me, because I think there could be some sort of legal battle going to emerge here in the coming years, because I know for a fact that Fred has trademarked Fred Golf, Fred Fitness, and Fred Skin. So Lexi's going to be a rival here for Fred and his brand.
All about the fitness.
That's all about,
he's all about player.
That's it. So he does 400 press-ups in the morning, every single morning.
Exactly.
Yep. That's it.
Right up to the breakfast table.
And of course, Fred's skin. Having good skin is very important. So yes, there's a lot happening there. But in all seriousness, I think it's obviously these days everything now is about building a brand. You have so many social media outlets there to take advantage of. So much free media you can exploit and reach an audience, and put across a certain message. If you use it properly, it's a very powerful tool, and I think Lexi's trying to accomplish that. And of course, she's not going to be a golfer, I assume, forever. Golf has given her a profile, a platform, and now she's trying to build that brand. Golf can be stressful. I think there's been a psychological toll on Lexi at times in recent years with golf and other things. So maybe she's looking for, a little bit of a distraction, maybe establishing some things she can do alongside playing golf, or maybe even in the future instead of playing golf, maybe becoming something completely different in the future. She's still obviously a very young person who's been in the limelight for, it seems, forever. She's only 25 years of age, and she's been on tour really since she was a school kid. I mean, really, 13 years old or whatever. So when she made her debut in the US Open, so she's looking for something a little bit different in the future. So we'll see what she does, and obviously it's I think it's an opportunity there to take advantage of it, social media and building up a brand. So we'll see how she accomplishes that in the coming years. But you touched on there, Carlos, some of the other clients at GSC. Sergio Garcia, Bryson DeChambeau, and Vijay Singh. I mean, these guys know how to deal with controversy, don't they? I mean, these guys know how to deal with some bad press. So clearly they're a tough outfit. So I'm sure she'll be looked after very well at GSC.
Yeah, Dennis Rodman say there's never bad press. It's only press.
Well,
doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, you could argue that. Yes, it depends.
I don't know. Tiger Woods would probably disagree with you on that.
Well, yeah, I think that crossed the line slightly in Tiger's case.
Hey, if I would have been, an iron, a club maker, I would have tried to sign him right away after that. I would have signed his wife. His former wife right there. But anyway, Fred, how about Lexi, the Lexi brand coming out?
Well, Lexi's obviously still very young. She's got a lot of years left to play yet, but she's looked at what Annika Sorenstam has done. She's looked at what, Nancy Lopez is doing. She's looked at some of the other ladies and what they've done, and she's getting this started early. If this works for her, this could outmass by a lot her winnings on the golf course, because she's got another 20 or 30 years of business to do in her lifetime. And this could really start building that brand and building that up over time. I think it's genius. I hope it works for her. I think she's starting with a lot of stuff. They might want to tone that down and pick one or two things and key on that and try to build that, and then maybe work off of some of that stuff rather than just kind of shotgun a lot of stuff out there. So, no, I think it's brilliant. Good for her. You know, she's not, they said that, she changes caddies a lot, but her core group around her has always been the same, her management and all the people that she trusts. And this has kind of opened up. They've gotten to her and said, hey, let's start doing this stuff now. Now's the perfect time to do it. So at 26 years old, she's got a lot of life ahead of her, and this could really set her up for a long, long time.
Most definitely. Hey, Fred, there's a complex issue happening at Pinehurst because they're, getting now 5 U.S. Opens, a test center, a golf house, Pinehurst, to become the first anchor site for the U.S. Open. But not everybody's happy there in North Carolina about this deal. So what's going on?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was just flabbergasted when I read this press release. 5 U.S. Opens clear out to 2047. And of course, I'm going to take the accolades for that, because didn't someone say right here on this show that they should just have the U.S. Amateur at Pinehurst and at Bandon Dunes? They don't need any other golf courses, just go there. Well, evidently somebody listened, and they're going to do the U.S. Open at Pinehurst, and so 5 times about every 6 years they're going to be like an anchor site for them. Now, there is a little backstory to this, and number 2 is fantastic. Number 4 is fantastic. A lot of great golf there at Pinehurst. Don't get me wrong there. I love the place, okay? But not all people of North Carolina are too happy about this, because it seems that the USGA kind of approached North Carolina about this idea and said, hey, we'll kind of put some money in. If you'll put some money in, well, North Carolina state government said, well, how about if we put in $18 million? And the USGA said, well, we'll put in 5. And so they're going to build this nice golf house. They're going to build a test center. They're going to do all these U.S. Opens. They're going to have all this great stuff. The state of North Carolina gains 35 new employees to get payroll taxes off it. It's going to take up a long time to make $18 million worth of taxes out of 35 employees. They might get some money out of the 5 U.S. Opens that they have there, because the economic impact of that is pretty big. But the rest of the state's going, hey, you put $18 million in Pinehurst. What about coastal Carolina? What about some of the other parts? What about the lowlands? What about Myrtle Beach? What's going on here? We got a lot of good stuff. And so not everybody's happy about it, Carlos, but we're going to get to see a lot of U.S. Open golf if we live long enough. Kieran, you might see it. I probably won't. But at Pinehurst over the next 20-some years.
Hey, Kieran, your take on that?
Well, Fred said there, if we all live to see it. I mean, when I used to have hopes and dreams. Now, given this year, I just want to survive 2020. Anything else will be a bonus. So, I mean, that's, if I make it 2024, I'll be quite happy with that at the moment. So, no, I think, Carlos, in all seriousness, I think it's as Fred touched on there, it's a controversial deal in many respects, but it's clearly a very, very good deal for the USGA. And I think you can understand the logic on their parts. I mean, I think Pinehurst is obviously a storied venue for golf. It's kind of the American equivalent of St Andrews, and that's more or less obviously what the USGA are trying to establish there. They want that to be their version of St Andrews, where they go back every 5 or 6 years. They have that established venue. It's what they build the structure of the US Open around. It's their marquee site. It's one they obviously want to make the most of. And as Fred touched on there, obviously it's a special part of the world for golf. So many fantastic courses in that surrounding area. And this is going to be a way to kind of celebrate those in future. So yeah, it's a great deal. In the sense of, for the USGA, it's a great deal. I think for the game of golf, it's probably a good deal. If you love Pinehurst, it's a great deal. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see. There is, of course, a degree of absurdity to looking at it and seeing that the event's more or less scheduled through 26, 27 years from now. I mean, it just seems bizarre. I mean, I thought it was daft enough that the Ryder Cup is scheduled at Congressional in 33 or something like that. I mean, it's just getting a bit silly now, with how far ahead they're planning these things. But it just shows you. So maybe, I don't know, perhaps 2047. I mean, I'm not too sure how old Mike Davis is, but perhaps he's going to be cryogenically frozen, and then you'll be, thawed out by the time we get there. I don't know. So quite possibly. Or maybe he's that Machiavellian and he's that demonic. He actually is like immortal. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. There could be some opinions about that sort of thing this week at the US Open. But yeah, so a great deal for Pinehurst, a great deal for the USGA. But I think a few eyebrows were certainly raised in parts of the state, looking at the detail behind the headlines.
By the power of Grayskull, he will make
That's
it to
it.
2047. You will see. But anyway, John Daly revealed last week that he was diagnosed with bladder cancer. Those news were first reported by Golf Channel's Will Gray. He said that he went in for a treatment for what he thought were kidney stones, but then the doctors discovered his condition was much more dire. I mean, he's 44 years old. He underwent surgery. They successfully treated the ailment, but unfortunately, they say that it's likely that the cancer will return. Now, despite that diagnosis, he continued his play on the Champions Tour, and he finished recently T12 at his most recent appearance last past weekend on the Sanford International. But, he might not be out of the woods yet when it comes to his illness, but at least he has something to share about because John Daly II, otherwise known as Little John, who is Daly's 16-year-old, he is also now the newly crowned winner of the International Junior Golf's Tour Falls kickoff event. I mean, took place Sunday at the Bishopsgate's Golf Academy in the Hills, Florida, and he held off the charge of Philip Jabukic, birding the last hole to win at finish at 12 under. So, Kieran, how about this diagnosis for John Daly? I mean, at least for now, he seems to be okay, but we don't know what's going to happen in the near future for him. But at least he has some good news about his son winning.
Yeah, his son's obviously a terrific young player and has so much potential, and could certainly follow his father's footsteps onto the highest levels of the game in the future. Obviously, that's a long way to go, but he has got the potential clearly. Very talented young player. Yeah, it's devastating news for John Daly and his family and friends and whatnot. I mean, it's obviously something that came unexpectedly. A real shock to him, and as you say, thankfully the immediate danger as such is gone, but of course it is likely that he will have to face further surgery and further treatments, and that's not going to be a very nice and pleasant experience to go through. So John Daly is someone who has a unique place in the game. Obviously, someone who back in the 1990s came in and just changed the scene of golf, and he had drew in a new audience. He played a different style of the game. His wins, crooked stick in the PGA and at St Andrews in the Open Championship, they were legendary wins. They were remarkable stories, great finishes, and obviously so much of his career has been defined by negative sides and disappointments and some poor behaviour and some controversies and various different things. But he still retained this following. He's still very popular with a significant segment of the golf community. I think it comes back to the thing, much like Miguel Angel Jimenez, where whether you like John Daly or not, or like what he represents or not, he is himself, and people like that. He is authentic. He is who he is, whether you like it or not. And so it's obviously sad, and I think we all hopefully his health will remain good for a long time, and you overcome this illness, and it won't come back, and you'll still have many years ahead to continue playing on the tour. Obviously, he should still play to a decent standard by finishing 12th at the weekend there, and he can hopefully enjoy seeing his son have successes in the years to come. So you don't wish this on anybody, and hopefully we'll see John still around in the years to come, and potentially playing in the Open again at St Andrews, something that I know that means a lot to him. The venue, the golf course, the setting, and it'd be a shame if we didn't see him back here in the future. So hopefully that will be the case. And yeah, obviously it's sad news, devastating news, and but as he said himself, life does go on. You have to kind of make the best of it. You have to live with these things, And I hope for his sake as well. And there was maybe an element of this last week, as far as I could see, is every round he was asked about it. And I think he did answer the questions honestly. But I think from his perspective, it's not something you want to be constantly reminded of. So hopefully, if he can continue playing golf on the Champions Tour and continues to remain healthy, that we talk about his golf rather than what potentially might be lurking in the future. So yeah, obviously sad news. We wish him the very best in his health, and hopefully he can, I say, be a part of the golf scene for many years to come.
Definitely sad news. I mean, like you mentioned, whether you like him or not, you're either a fan of him or not. He has his legion of fans anyway, and this is not something that you wish on anyone. So therefore, Fred, I know sometimes we've made fun of him or in the way that he has done things. We might not agree, but definitely there's something I think we can agree. This is something we wouldn't wish on him or anybody else.
Yeah, exactly, guys. I feel the same way. And as you know, I've never really been a big John Daly fan. He was amazing. The way he burst on the tour and the way he played the game was kind of fun to watch. But his antics away from the golf course kind of took away the luster for me. But this is something you don't wish on anybody, and we want to wish him the best and hope it all goes well for him. And yeah, as far as his son, he looks like he's going to be a really great young player. Going to be fun to watch him as he comes on up through the next few years.
Fred, a name I mentioned not long ago, like a name for a guy that you have to watch for, Takumi Kanaya. He became the first Asian to win the coveted McCormack Award medal. So how about Takumi Kanaya earning this accolade?
He's 22 years old. He's been the #1 player in the World Amateur Golf Ranking all during this year. He tied for 5th, was low amateur in the Japan Golf Tour's Fujisaki Classic in September, following a 9-10. He didn't play for 9 months because of COVID. He had tied for 3rd, was low amateur in the Australian Open last year in December. He will compete. He is in the U.S. Open this week in Winged Foot. He won the Asia Pacific Amateur, which is, as we know, a really big tournament. He won that in 2018, was runner-up last year. So the last couple of years, he's really been a top amateur player around the world. His goal is to try to make it onto the Japanese Olympic team for the Tokyo Games next year. So he's really trying to do that. And he was a member of the winning international team in the Arnold Palmer Cup. So, you know, he's had just a really great year, and he is one of the best, right now is the best amateur player in the world.
Kieran, your take.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's obviously a great achievement for him to have this honour, the Mark McCormack Medal, and he touched on that himself as being a great accolade in his career, and obviously a very talented player and a great amateur record. Still does. We'll see him at the US Open this week. We'll see him in the Open Championship next year at Royal St George's as well, as courtesy of his amateur exemption. So yeah, a great win for him, a great achievement for him rather, and obviously looking at him as being a Japanese player, Hideki Matsuyama has been obviously the stellar player over the past few years from Japan. Remember Ryo Ishikawa, who just over a decade ago was going to be the next big thing, and then didn't really accomplish very much and largely disappeared. But actually, coincidentally, Ishikawa is actually in the US Open field this week. He hasn't played in a major for many, many years, as far as I can tell. So he's back this week. Japanese golfers are slowly coming back to prominence behind Matsuyama. Potentially we have Matsuyama's successor already here in the waiting. But Fred touched on there, his goal is to potentially be part of the Japanese team next year in Tokyo in the Olympic Games. Obviously that would be a massive achievement. It would be a once in a lifetime opportunity for him to do so. But he also says that his next goals are to win professional majors. So he's a confident young man, that's for sure. I mean, he's not even on tour yet. He's not even a professional. He wants to win professional majors. So he wants to go. He wants to do a John Daly and skip right to the top and miss out all the bit in the middle. So you have to admire that. So a good player, obviously, and one that we will certainly keep an eye on this week and indeed in the months and potentially years ahead.
Yeah, I said it. I mean, he's definitely going to be He's going to be a great player. I don't know exactly his ceiling, but we still have to see him in the with the pros. But like you mentioned, I mean, he's keep reaching for the stars, so that's the way to be. He's aiming to do something Hideki Matsuyama hasn't done, or any other of the Japanese players. So we'll see. At least confidence-wise, he doesn't lack on it. Fred, I'm gonna go for you on this one because I know that if I'm not even gonna talk about it, I'm gonna let you lead it about Danny Noonan to caddy at the U.S. Open. What is that? Am I reading it right?
Everybody remembers Danny Noonan, right? Actor Michael O'Keefe. Well, O'Keefe put a tweet out that he wanted to be a caddy in the U.S. Open at Winged Foot. And he got his chance, actually. He's not going to actually be in the tournament, but he got to caddy on Monday and Tuesday for Danny Balin, who was a New York pro who was in the tournament. So he carried the bag for a couple days. O'Keefe grew up just 15 minutes from Winged Foot out on up there, and he caddied there as a kid. So he does know the golf course. He's been nominated for an Oscar for one of his roles. Of course, the Caddyshack is a golf cult classic, and now he can add a major championship caddy to his resume. So Balin said that he's not bringing a lighter bag. O'Keefe is going to have to be carrying the full tour bag. He said he's going to put him to work. He also said that Balin said he's been kind of rewatching Caddyshack to make sure he had all the one-liners so he could zing O'Keefe with those while they're out there playing. And Michael Breed actually set this up. Michael Breed, as we know from the Golf Channel, did the golf lessons and all that kind of thing. He's now a pro at Trump Ferry, whatever, there in New York, outside of New York. And so he set this up with Balin. He said, why don't you get O'Keefe to come and caddy for you a couple days. So they got it done. So Danny Noonan from Caddyshack, Michael O'Keefe got to be caddy for a couple days at Winged Foot for the U.S. Open.
How about that, Kieran?
Well, it's one of those wonderfully absurd stories that sometimes you get in sport, and I think it's made some headlines at the beginning of a week. Obviously, when you get into a major championship week, the first couple of days can be a little bit of a grind as you're waiting for the event to actually start, and people are searching for things to talk about. Well, this is something a little bit different to talk about. So it's a fun story. I think that's fair to say. Although I have to tell you, this is basically telling you that Santa Claus isn't real. And sorry, kids, I have never seen Caddyshack from start to finish.
No.
Oh, I knew.
I'm such a traditionalist. You can't bear yourself to watch it.
No, I've never sat through it. I've seen bits of it. But, it's one of those things where, because, as you say, it's such a cult classic with the golf community, is you've heard so much about it. You've heard the lines. You've heard all the scenes. You more or less have seen the movie without actually seeing it. You know so much about it. And in a way, seeing it would actually ruin it, I think, in from start to finish. So that said, I am that little bit of I do like to be a little bit different. So if people tell me, oh, you got to watch this, oh, it's so great, oh, it's so fantastic, I'll refuse to watch it. I don't want to do it. If people like something, I don't want to do it. So that's me. I like to be different. I like to be, kind of
contrarian.
A contrarian. That is it. That's one of many adjectives you can use to describe me, I guess. But yeah, I've never seen it from start to finish. So all this Danny Noonan stuff, it kind of goes over my head. So, but yeah, I can appreciate the story. It's a bit of fun. It's unusual, and but I do know some the guys in that film. Obviously, Rodney Dangerfield and Bill Murray and all that. So I do know Caddyshack. But you know what? I haven't really seen it. I have to say, I'm not a great fan. I know it's a bit different because obviously it's a bit of a satirical comedy in many respects. But I'm not a great fan of sports films, especially golf ones, and because I always feel you can't replicate sport in a movie. It doesn't work. The drama of sport is too real to be replicated in a film. That said, obviously this is a bit of a different kind of film. But you know what? I've never sat through it. Maybe I should. But as I say, I like to be that little bit different. I like to be the contrarian in the room. So I might just be that one guy that's never seen it from start to finish.
You are that guy. That is for sure.
I love being that guy. This is why I'm here. I love being that guy. So I think it's Fred. I knew the second I said that, and I've been saving it up all day because I just knew, and you didn't disappoint me. Because I just knew the anguish in your voice would be so real.
Awful.
I could feel the pain when you went, "Oh no!" Oh, so authentic.
Thank God I'm the one that has the remove button here. So if it would have been Fred, we would have been only 2 right now here. But anyway, with that, we wrap up the Par 5 news. And the next thing we're going to talk now is a practice range, where every week we pick a topic and each one of us takes our own shots at it. Of course, this week has to be the big one, because 5 months ago, the thought of contesting the U.S. Open at Winged Foot was unimaginable. It was originally scheduled for June 18th to the 21st in Mamaroneck, New York. The event was set to be played just 4 miles from the city of New Rochelle, which at the time had developed into one of the first true COVID-19 hotspots. So the event was in June, but of course they postponed it to September, a date that brought both optimism and skepticism. Because after months-long lockdown in New York, the USGA has indeed brought golf's national championship back to Winged Foot, marking the second major championship that is now sandwiched between the start of the 2020-2021 regular season and the Masters. Yeah, that's 2020 for you there. This year will mark the 6th time that the U.S. Open is played at the iconic Winged Foot Golf Club, and the first since 2006. This was a course that was designed by A.W. Tillinghast, and the course dates back to 1921, has traditionally been exactly what the USGA envisioned for golf courses hosting the championship. An absolute brute. I mean, just Google the massacre at Winged Foot. You'll quickly get the gist. I mean, a field is going to be 144 players, less than the traditional 156, and that's because the USGA was unable to hold open qualifying due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of the top 70 players in the official World Golf Rankings will compete, including 10 previous US champions, and that list includes 3-time US Open champion Tiger Woods, defending champion Gary Woodland, but will not include 2017 and 2018 champ Bruce Koepka. The 4-time major winner finished second to Woodland a year ago, but will not play due to injury. 2 other players that are not going to be there is due to COVID-19, Sam Horsfield and Scotty Scheffler. Those are the 2 withdrawals because of that. But still, there's a loaded field at a brutal golf course stepped with rich history. It's the perfect combination for golf's second major championship of 2020. Kieran, how about the history and the course of the U.S. Open?
Well, as you set up so beautifully there, Carlos, so immaculately, so expertly, Jim Nantz couldn't do it better himself. This is one of the truly great U.S. Open venues. I mean, this is when you think of a U.S. Open, you think of Oakmont, you think of Pebble Beach, and you think of Winged Foot. This is one of those venues. This is one of those truly quintessential U.S. Open style courses, and it's become legendary for really how brutally difficult it is, particularly when the USGA come to town and dress it up. But I think it's a very difficult golf course at the best of times. I mean, Tiger Woods today speaking says he puts it up there in the top 3 in terms of difficulty, alongside Oakmont and indeed Carnoustie in Scotland as the 3 most difficult championship venues, where essentially you could just turn up tomorrow unannounced and stage a major championship and would play perfectly normally. This is at that level in terms of difficulty. Really thick rough, tight fairways, very fast greens. This is kind of the archetype of what the US Open became. It was always a tough test, and this golf course has always been very difficult. But you mentioned the massacre at Winged Foot back in 1974, when Hale Irwin won with a score of 7 over par. The guys were practically traumatized after playing that week, and that became what the USGA wanted. They wanted to set this incredibly extreme test of golf. Now, whether it's the best test of golf and whether it actually identifies the best players, I think it's very much up for dispute. But there's no question that it's a psychological examination like no other. and it's good. If you say in recent years, the past decade, the US Open has been somewhat experimental. They've gone to new venues, they've tried different style courses, from Chambers Bay, which is obviously a bit controversial, to Erin Hills that nobody remembers because it was possibly the most unmemorable event I've ever seen. They've tried to experiment with the event in recent years. But if you love your nuts and bolts, really tough, grinding, brutally difficult, watching the best players embarrass themselves, if that's your cup of tea, this is your thing. You're going to love this week. And I think as Justin Thomas said today in the press coming up, he says, and I quote, "The viewers at home are going to see some pretty bizarre stuff, and probably a lot of putts and chips that make us look pretty bad. If you're into that stuff, then you're going to like this week. And if you're not really into that stuff, then you're going to think, well, golf can be better than this." Now, I'm kind of on that side of the fence on this. But that said, I think once or twice a year, something a bit different. That said, we have seen a US Open style event fairly recently. The BMW Championship was very much a US Open style event, played at Olympia Fields, a former US Open venue, and it played basically like a US Open. John Ram won there, beat Dustin Johnson, that amazing finish with all the long putts. So this event, I think, has got a little bit of following up to do, but I think it will surpass that in terms of difficulty. So the US Open, Carlos, obviously, it's America's national championship, goes back to 1895, back in those early formative days. That's when all those nasty transatlantic traveling Brits came over and won and dominated that event. So all the Scots and all the English, they came over here and they took your national title with them. Although many of them actually lived in America, so it's not quite the same. But they came over here and they established the US Open, established the game, and dominated the early years. But then, of course, the likes of Francis May came along, and John McDermott, and then later Bobby Jones and Walter Hagen, and then the Americans began to dominate the US Open, and really they have done essentially ever since. The international winners of the US Open have been quite rare through the years, but of course we saw one the last time the US Open came here to Wingfoot, and when Jeff Ogilvy won what I think is one of the most memorable US Opens of the past 20 years. You go back to 2000, we had Tiger Woods winning, incredible performance at Pebble Beach. That kind of set the standard. But I think the 2006 US Open for drama was unsurpassed. We all remember, Jeff Ogilvy winning that event, but it was so much about the guys who lost it. Padraig Harrington was forgotten about. He actually bogeyed the last 3 holes to lose by 2. Jim Furyk made mistakes towards the end, but it was the other 2 guys who were there. It was the 2 guys who have never won a US Open. Indeed, one of them never won a major. Colin Montgomerie and Phil Mickelson. Montgomerie holed a massive putt on 17. He hit the fairway, a brilliant drive on the 18th hole, the 72nd hole. It was a par to win, bogey to get in a playoff. Monty was 43 years of age, his last and best chance to win a major, and he hit one of the worst iron shots he's ever hit. One of the best iron players of his era. All he had to hit was that lovely high fade he always hit, and he just chunked it into the rough, chipped on the green, free putted, lost by 1. Disaster. He never won his major. And then Phil, of course, stood in that tee. Same scenario. Par to win, bogey for the playoff, and he hit his tee shot, of course, way left and in the hospitality, and then hacked up the hole, and eventually he made double bogey 2 and lost by 1. Jeff Ogilvy went away with the trophy. So there's a lot of scar tissue here, but it's had some great winners too. Bobby Jones won back in 1929, the first US Open at Wingfoot, in one of the truly bizarre results. And people, it's no longer the case, but of course, US Open was famous for having very long playoffs. Remember Tiger Woods winning in 2008, 18 holes against Rocco Mediate. That was amazingly dramatic. Hasn't always been great for TV, but could you imagine if the 1929 US Open was televised? Obviously it wasn't, there was no TV back then, but if there was, it was 36-hole playoff between Bobby Jones and Al Espinosa. And Bobby Jones won by 23 shots. So it's the most one-sided finish of all time, which makes me laugh. Bobby Jones shot, I think it was, I've got a list here, he shot 72-69, whereas Espinosa shot 84-80. So he won by 23 shots. So that wouldn't be great for TV, but I think this week will be great for TV. It's set up so well. So, say, a storied venue, a real classic, Northeast US golf club, one of the truly great clubs, great history. Claude Harmon and Craig Wood, 2 Masters champions, were club professionals here. Butch Harmon grew up on this golf course. The clubhouse is a magnificent architectural masterpiece. The golf course arguably is the same. So there's a lot to love about this. When you think of US Open style venues, this is the ultimate. And if you want your classic US Open, then I think this week, guys, we're going to get it.
Fred, since the PGA Tour resumed back in June, we've seen 6 winners with scores of 20 under par or better. That's, of course, highlighted by Dustin Johnson's 30 under par masterpiece at the Northern Trust. But this week, it's going to be the polar opposite. Winged Foot is a tried and true gem and one of the USGA's love for 2 things. I mean, it's proximity to the New York metropolitan area, but also for sheer brute. So Kieran expressed all about this history. So tell us a little bit of your take on the history of it, the Winged Foot, what to expect of it, and also about the coverage. I mean, it's going to be like the Masters, like an experience like none other.
Well, I like Kieran's line there. He may want to trademark that. A psychological test like no other. Did I say that correctly?
Absolutely, yes.
You might want to copyright that. You and Nance, you'll have your own thing there. Psychological test like no other. I love that. Winged Foot, yeah, we founded 1923. Tillinghast. Oh, by the way, Tillinghast is buried in Toledo, Ohio. I didn't know if you guys knew that or not, but just mentioned. 2015, Gil Hanse did a renovation. This is the 6th U.S. Open that has been held at Winged Foot. Plus, there's been 2 U.S. Women's Opens, 2 U.S. Junior AMs, a Senior Open, a Walker Cup, and a Partridge in a Pear Tree. This is, like Kieran said, one of the classic old treasures in the United States. 29, Bobby Jones won here, as Kieran said. Billy Casper in 59 over Bob Rosbrook. Back to you, Rossi. Winged Foot hosted the 1997 PGA Championship, won by Davis Love with the rainbow over his shoulder. Who could forget that? Hale Irwin got it here in 74, got one of his 3 U.S. Opens. Unbelievably hard golf course that week. And then who can forget Fuzzy Zeller in a playoff, won by 8 shots in 84 over Greg Norman. Greg can't win the majors. And the Shark waving the white towel, in surrender. It was the heat, the difficulty of the golf course. I got a question for you. We're going to discuss this another time, but Fuzzy Zeller won 2 majors, 10 PGA Tour titles. Why is he in the Hall of Fame? What's going on with that? Is that comment he made about Tiger and at the Masters, that keep him out? Anyhow, the last time Kieran touched on it, this was, you talk about a massacre. This was a real train wreck. This was a train wreck in 2006. You had Monty, you had Patty Harrington, you had Jim Furyk, Ogilvy and Monty. Oh my goodness, it was something. Johnny Miller had a great story here. You talked about it. In the 2006 U.S. Open, we saw Phil make 2 mental errors. Get it up there with a 3-iron, hit a 4-iron somewhere around the green, up and in. Worst case scenario, you're in a playoff. That was the biggest fall apart in the U.S. Open on the last hole in history. Patty Harrington bogeyed the last 3 holes to lose by 2. Furyk bogeyed the last hole. Mickelson made double. Monty got hosed. He had to wait for 5 minutes. I thought he got such a bad break there. Then he chili dipped in short of the green, didn't get it up and down. Never had the last hole. So many scenarios. It was just incredible. The course is tough. Oakmont and Winged Foot must be the 2 toughest courses in tournament golf. I love that. I had to get that in there by Johnny. The course, it's going to be difficult. The winning score, under par, forget it. You're going to be over par. How much? Well, the local pro there says they're trying for 8 over for the winning score after 72 holes. That's a lot. I think the winning score was like 5 or 6 over the last time it was there. So, it's going to be a week of torment and anguish for the players. Par is 70. It's only 6,961 yards. The golfers will complain that it's not fair. Perhaps it's not, but that's what makes the United States Open the world's most demanding golf tournament and a psychological test like no other.
Fred, how about the coverage? Streamlining,
it's gonna be everywhere. You got an app. There's an app for that, right? You can't be inside the ropes, no problem. You got an app for that. Go get the USGA app. You've got will be played September 14th through 20th this week. You've got, let's see, what else? It's available on both usopen.com and US Open app. You got course flyovers presented by Deloitte. You got the US Open live stream presented by American Express. So it'll tell you all about it. You got access to 3 channels of live streaming coverage. It include featured groups, featured holes, US Open 360, a new channel dedicated to the practicer. You can just watch them practice if you want to, which I happen to like that, actually. I like that better than watching a tournament a lot of times. Matter of fact, when I go to a tournament, I just go to the driving range in the practice area. I pretty much hang out there most of the time. Then you've got live scoring presented by Cisco, so you can track it all the time, 24/7. So just go to your app, go to usopen.com. All that stuff is there for you to watch it, and plus it's going to be on TV too a little bit.
All right, now let's start to talk about the players. I mean, there's going to be an interesting lineup. And by the way, yeah, you were right. Last time, Jeff Ogilvy, like Kieran mentioned, won at 5 over par. And of course, like we mentioned, the massacre at Wingfoot. So, I mean, that's just unbelievable. But anyway,
I don't think it's as dried out as hard as it has been in the past. I think it's a little bit softer because they've been having some rain and stuff. So that may keep the scores from going extremely high, but I think it'll be at least 3 or 4 over par, and the course is going to be difficult still.
Yeah, well, after 36 holes, the field will be cut to the low 60s and ties, and we'll see what happens there. I mean, Tiger Woods returns to action alongside Justin Thomas and Colin Morikawa for the first 2 rounds. Love that pairing there. There's going to be an All-Arizona State group of Phil Mickelson, John Ram, and Paul Casey. Also, there's an Oklahoma State group. I guess they're both are going to be trying to see, because Ricky Fowler, Matthew Wolff, and Victor Hovland are going to be paired together. There's also an All-Canada group. Adam Hadwin, Mackenzie Hughes, and Corey Connors. Now, of course, defending champ Gary Woodland will be playing alongside the Open champ winner Shane Lowry, as well as amateur Andy Ogletree. And DJ is going to be grouped with Bryson DeChambeau and Tony Finau. I guess they'll be trying to see who's going to be driving it the longest there, and at least try to keep it straighter at least. But anyway, a great field. So, guys, who are your top amateurs and top dark horses before we go to the top players? Kieran, you go first.
Yes, well, I think just quickly, I think 2 things are worth pointing out. I think one, what Fred touched on there about players who are complaining or will complain about the setup in the golf course. You can rule those guys out instantly. I remember Jack Nicklaus always made a great point of this, where I think he was talking about the Open Championship at the time, and just generally majors as a rule. If you turn up to the event and he heard guys saying, "Oh, the rough's too long, the greens are too fast, so it's not good enough, the fairways are too rough," he'd think, "Well, that guy's not going to win. I can knock him off the list, take him off the list," and then you round down the field from there, because the guys who complain psychologically, they're beaten before it has even started. And so Jack Nicklaus never ever complained about a golf course setup or how a golf course played. He always believed in adapting your game no matter what to the challenge, and that's why he had the best record of anybody else in these events, because he did that better than anyone else. And that's the secret to playing majors very well, is being able to compose yourself and being mentally strong. And I think that's more apparent than any other event in a US Open, and particularly US Open like this. So you look for those players. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the biggest hitters or the best players that are going to win necessarily. In many respects, there's 2 characteristics. I think Jeff Ogilvy, who is not playing this week, his exemption ran out of US Open several years ago, the last winner here. Jeff's one of the most erudite players in the game, speaks very well, very knowledgeable, and very articulate, and knows an awful lot about golf course setups and so on. He talks about how, as far as he's concerned, the key thing here at Wingfoot is players from 100 yards and in, because guys are going to miss fairways. Everyone's going to miss fairways. Everyone's going to find rough. It's how they recover from that. The guys that make the up and downs, the guys that can escape and make those crucial pars, can minimize the damage. That's actually why Phil Mickelson's played so well in the US Open through the years. Phil has obviously the best short game of his generation. He's great from 100 yards in, great wedge player. That's why he was still able to finish runner-up 6 times despite his somewhat wayward game off the tee. As everybody's going to have to scramble at some point. So it's who does that the best. Of course, hitting fairways helps. So it's not really about long hitting, as Fred touched on there. Yardage-wise, it's not a long course. But hit the fairways, and then you have to take your opportunities when you get them. But of course, everyone will make bogeys. It's just ensuring the doubles and the triples do not appear in your card. And what will achieve that is by getting up and down, having a good short game, holding those crucial putts on really fast greens. And of course, again, if you're pitching out the fairway, getting up and down from there. So there's a different aspect to it. But of course, you could argue that it's not a true test of a player's all-round game, because in the end, everybody's having to play the golf course in essentially the same way because the fairways are narrow. So there's really no idea of taking on different angles or trying different strategies. You go to a golf course like Royal Melbourne, or indeed Augusta, particularly Old Augusta, or St Andrews, those classic layouts where you have wide fairways. Guys can play the golf course completely different ways and take on different strategies and really express their own personality on it. Whereas here, you're very much told you've got to hit the fairway, hit the green, do your best from there. Very much A to B, joining the dots, as it were. But who can do that the best? That's going to be the challenge. So in terms of those outsiders you mentioned there, Carlos, well, I think there's some guys that do stand out for slightly different reasons. I have kind of got a list. I've actually come prepared with a list this time of both my outsiders and my favourites. Usually I just make it up as I go along, but today I'm actually prepared. Don't know why that is. I'm very tired, but I've done it anyway. So that's the kind of dedication I bring to this program. But so in terms of my outsiders, I looked at guys who are ranked outside of the world's top 50 as we speak. So if I rule out all the guys who are kind of inside the 40s or the 30s, but who are the guys outside that who could compete very well here? Well, I've got Martin Keimer on my list, winner of the US Open back at Pinehurst 6 years ago. And Martin Keimer hasn't won since then, but he's been playing very well of late. He almost won 2 European Tour events at the Belfry and at the very formidable Valderrama, which is the most difficult golf course in Europe. He came agonizingly close to winning there. So he is coming into this week. He hasn't won for a long time, obviously, but he's playing well. Tee to green, he actually leads the European Tour in strokes gained, total and approach. He's hitting the ball beautifully, which obviously can bode well for winged foot, but he is slightly inconsistent around the greens. His short game is by far the weakest part of his game, and that may prove a problem when those up and downs are required to be made. But Martin Keimer, I think, could have a good week. As a completely outside player who could do quite well this week, I've got Justin Harding, another European Tour player from South Africa. He's won around the world, and he's got a great short game. He finished third at Valderrama recently. It's a very tough golf course. Different kind of difficulty. This it's more tree lined. It's less about rough, just very narrow fairways, but still a very difficult golf course. He played there very well. There was a great history of South African golfers in this event. Gary Player, Ernie Helder, Keith Goosen, they've all won this. Justin Harding, he could do quite well. So who else is on my list? I've got Thomas Pieters, another European Tour player who has missed a cut in his previous 2 US Opens, but he comes across to the Atlantic in good shape. 2 good finishes in the European Tour at Celtic Manor. And also stats-wise, he's one of the most impressive figures on the European Tour. So he's second in strokes gained total, second in approach, and 9th in strokes gained off the tee. Plays very well. Guy who's so much potential, with a real Ryder Cup star when he broke through in 2016. Has played well in majors, hasn't quite fulfilled his potential. But you know what? He has all the numbers, he has all the stats, he has all the potential. Maybe this is the time to now actually fulfill that promise and maybe even pick up a victory, or at least contend in a major championship once again, which he's certainly capable of doing. So he's on my list as a potential outsider. So those are my kind of outsiders, Carlos. I think it's difficult to look beyond the favourites. Also on my list, I've got Rasmus Højgaard from Denmark, the 19-year-old making his first major appearance. Wonderful talent. It's going to be a big step up for him, but I think it's hard to ignore somebody who plays golf so well as he does. I actually was going to mention both Ches Reavie and Kevin Streelman, but they're both actually inside my in the world's top 50, not my world's top 50, the world's top 50. And so therefore they're ruled out by my artificial criteria that I set for no reason, although I want to make it difficult for myself. And also I've got Robert McIntyre, my compatriot, who I think could play quite well this week. He made his first US major appearance at the PGA over on the West Coast in San Francisco, and he played very well there, made the cut. A guy who's, again, he's got all the tools. I mean, he played very well in the Open last year at Royal Portrush, finished 6th there. Hasn't won a European Tour, but he's someone who plays difficult golf courses well. I'm not saying he's going to win, but I think he's going to do okay. So these are the kind of guys I'm looking at. You know, I really want to say Phil Mickelson, I have to say. I want to say Phil. I think Phil, that is obviously going to be the story. You know, it'd be unbelievable. It'd be Cinderella stuff. But I want to put him on my list just for sentimental reasons. But I don't think he's going to win. But wouldn't it be a story? Imagine if he was even in contention going into Sunday in the top 10 or something like that.
You don't have to worry about it. He won't make a cut.
He won't be. I knew you were going to say that. I tell you what, I don't think he's going to make the cut. I don't think Tiger's going to make the cut. Frankly, I think a lot of the legends are going to struggle this week. But who knows? They could do anything. And if either of them were to get into contention, it would obviously be a great story. You mentioned, Tiger back in 2006 missed the cut here. Famously playing just not long after the death of his father Earl, and obviously the emotions of that were very strong still, and he missed the cut. First time in a major as a professional, missing the cut, and of course he bounced back by winning the Open a month later at Hoylake. So yeah, there's a lot of stories here. Those are my outside guys, Carlos, and I've got my favourites to come and bring to you very shortly.
Yeah, after ruining my surprises there, I mean, this is the last time I ever tell you to go before me.
You keep making that mistake every time you do it.
No, it's amazing. But anyway.
You should just
go. Fred, go ahead, because I am so deflated now. I have to see how can I pick it up and talk about the guys that he just talked about. So go ahead. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to say now.
Well, the only thing I'm going to mention real quick, there are 13 amateurs in the field. We do have some familiar names: Cole Hammer, Andy Ogletree, Preston Summerhays, who was he won his U.S. Junior Amateur at Inverness, by the way. James Sugar, a European guy, Kieran, you know him. John Augenstein. These are all really good young players, guys that we will probably see win on the PGA Tour in the future, but they're just here to get an education this week. They're taking an advanced course in golf course management and professional golf performance. Don't look for them to win this week, but it's going to be fun. Catch them on Thursday and Friday, because you probably won't see many of them on Saturday and Sunday. We got, I don't know, I'm not, Kieran touched on so many guys. I'm going to wait on my tour, on my player development. You talked a little bit about Tiger, and I'm going to just make one point about Tiger. If he'll leave his driver in the bag and just hit maybe 5-wood stingers or hit something down there in the fairway and then let it go on to his iron game and his short game, if his putting is okay. So if he'll keep the driver out and if he's putting okay, he could be in contention on Sunday. He still could do that. Have you ever seen anybody that doesn't play and still comes out and is competitive? It's Tiger Woods. A golf course like this, he'll be mentally prepared. It might just still be rusty. We're not talking about Rory. What about Rory? He's still got game. If he could, not be quite as inconsistent and maybe have a little bit of flair and fire, maybe he could be doing well too. So that's all I'm going to talk about right now, and I'll turn it back to you, Carlos.
All right. So, Tiger, I'll talk to him about him soon. But anyway, my sleepers, of course, my pick for the top amateur right now at Takumi Kanaya. That's it. Give him the medal. That's it. It's done. Now, sleepers. Yeah, Kieran already talked about him. Martin Keimer. He hasn't had his best stuff in a long time, but it's apparently back now. And we've been talking about him when we have been giving the results in the European Tour. I mean, and when he really gets hot, he really gets hot. Just remember what he did in his runaway 2014 US Open win. He was just on a streak like this one. And he owns a pair of top 3 finishes in his last 2 European Tour starts. If you look at him, he appears to be rejuvenated, happy to be competing once again. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him do well. And who knows, maybe even win. Now, another player, Brendan Todd. And if you're asking me why, you clearly haven't been paying attention, because he has been a revelation over the past year, climbing back from obscurity to win 2 PGA Tour titles, contending a handful of others. I mean, he's finding the fairways, putting well on fast greens, and should be a nice combo of assets this week. And I think this is on his wheelhouse to get there. The other player that I've been mentioning a lot, and anybody that has been seeing the show, Rasmus Højgaard. I mean, if you see the 2 hottest players on the European Tour over the past few months are also 2 insanely talented up-and-comers. And I readily admit, I mean, this is a lot to expect from him, but hey, he is that talented, and it's a wait-and-see approach. But we'll see if he's, whether his talents can travel. I think they can. So this is a player I'm very excited to see how he's gonna fare. Another player that I would say, you mentioned Thomas Peters. I'm gonna go with the other Thomas from Belgium, Thomas Dietrich. I mean, he definitely big hitter playing his just first career major this week, but I don't see him being too intimidated by it. I mean, he's a big hitter, just like Thomas Peters, who should be doing very well. I like him a lot, but Thomas Dietrich has been playing really, really well, and he has posted really nice scores in 3 of his last starts on the 67. So that is one. And the other one that I want to mention on the dark horses would be Ches Reavie. I mean, just look at what he has been doing. I mean, he doesn't get enough respect in the market. He was T3 last year, T3 last week, should be primed for another strong run. That's one of the dark horses that you have to look for this weekend. Now, let's talk about top players, top picks. Fred, you go first.
Well, the odds makers really like the top players in the world, surprisingly. Dustin Johnson, John Rahm, Rory, Xander Schauffele, and Justin Thomas top the list of the best odds. Speaking of odds, did you see that somebody bet 45,000 on Phil Mickelson to win at 75-1, right? 3.37 mil would be the payout for a $45,000 bet. Guy must have a death wish on that 45K. He must not need it very bad. Top players, I don't know. I got to go with my guy. I'm sticking with my guy, Morikawa. You talk about long shots or something. He maybe not that long, but I really like Kevin Kisner too. He's got the short game, guys. If he can get it in the fairway, he's got the short game, and he's just gritty. I really think he'll be up around the top 10 come Sunday. Accuracy off the tee is going to be a premium, and you better be a better than average chipper. And of course, Kisner excels at both of those things. I would not be surprised to see Justin Rose have a rebound and have a really good week. He's kind of been struggling, but this is a U.S. Open. This is his kind of golf course. It demands accurate driving and good iron play, and that's what he does. He excels at. Other than that, I really think Justin Thomas is going to be a factor, and I think Webb Simpson is as well, because Webb has just been playing off the charts all year. So I really don't think this is a great course for Dustin Johnson or Jon Rahm. But, Kieran, you made a really good point. They both played fantastic at Olympia Fields, and Olympia Fields was about as close to a U.S. Open golf course as you're going to find. So I don't think that they're going to do well this week, but, we'll see. So my top guy, Morikawa, I like JT. I like Webb, and I like Kisner for my kind of long shot. That's my guys, I guess.
Okay, Kieran, don't pick mine.
Yes, well, I must, before I shatter your dreams again, Carlos, I must quickly mention that your Fred touched on that story about the guy that put the bet on Phil Mickelson. Now, I wonder what alias Phil used when he was submitting that bet for himself. I mean,
yeah,
really? I mean, it's gone.
A burner account.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is Phil Mickelson. And the funny thing was, he was asked the other day, someone said to him, "So Phil, your odds 75-1. What do you think of that?" And he says, "I don't know. I'm not a betting guy." I mean, it's just like, come on, Phil. You can't play that game with us. So yes, that was a good story. We'll see what happens. Mind you, if Phil was to somehow win, I mean, that would be the story of the century in many respects. But yeah, I think it's unlikely. But yes. So my favourites for the week. Now, I actually do like the top players. I think there's going to be one of the big name guys is going to win. With a good run of major winners in terms of the top players and stature wise, succeeding. And I think this golf course will set up very well for them. And I do actually like our top two players, Dustin Johnson and indeed Jon Rahm. Now, Jon Rahm's someone who I think Dustin Johnson has such a fantastic game. He's a US Open winner, won it at Oakmont, such a difficult venue there too. His wedge game has improved massively over the last 3 or 4 years. And yeah, when he's on, he's as good as anybody, if not better than anybody else. So I see Dustin playing very well, and he has that, a way to shut out what's happening mentally as well. He's great at dealing with adversity, as he's shown through the years, and even indeed at that US Open that he won. He had to deal with that rules controversy halfway through, and he still shook that off to win. So I think Dustin's someone who can deal with the bad breaks and the bad moments and move on and have some good moments, and will take advantage of the good play that he has and will make some birdies on this golf course. If he can avoid the big numbers, then I think he will be thereabouts. Jon Rahm's someone who I wouldn't really, before this year, have put into consideration for a US Open, given his somewhat bombastic personality and very fiery temperament. He gets very angry and very frustrated at times. And I think he even said this himself, as he would not think a US Open suits him. That's until this year. And you look at this year, Fred mentioned the Olympia Fields victory, basically a US Open setup. He also won at Muirfield Village in the Memorial, which was very difficult setup as well. Jack was basically saying, you guys aren't going to shoot 20 under par on my golf course again, so that was it. And it was a tough setup, and he won there too. So that's 2 victories on 2 really difficult golf courses, and that must give him confidence. And Rahm has all the tools, great around the greens, great touch, great feel. If he can keep that temperament in check, then I think he will play very well. And of course, he, arguably is the best player around right now not to have won a major, because he's one of only 3 players who have been world number 1 and haven't won a major. The other 2 are Luke Donald and Lee Westwood. So Jon Rahm's the third on that list, and who knows, this could be his week. He's on my list. I also like Xander Schauffele, who hasn't won for a while, but of course he kind of won the Tour Championship. If you take out the bizarre scoring system, he actually won it on the medal score for the 4 days. Had the lowest score. Guy who has all the tools, all the attributes to play well in these big events, and he's shown that in the past. Now it's time for him to potentially cross that line and become a winner again. So I think he'll play very well this week. Webb Simpson, former US Open champion, won over at the Olympic Club. That was a very tough setup there. It was an over par win, I think it's +2 he won that year with. And he's a much better player now than what he was then. The last 2 or 3 years he's played superbly, won the Players' Championship, had a great run coming out of the lockdown this year. Again, he's someone who is a grinder. He's kind of that classic US Open, kind of Andy North, Lee Janzen style player, where he's very good at making scores on tough golf courses, a good battler. And that's a great attribute to have at this particular venue, I would say. And my other 2 favourites, I've got 6 players on this list. We've got Johnson, Rahm, Schauffele, Simpson. We've also got Paul Casey, who played so well at the PGA Championship. He played amazingly on that final day. It was so unfortunate. He just happened to be beaten by the better guy on the day in Morikawa. Casey did nothing wrong. Played one of the best rounds of his career. And he's someone who plays difficult golf courses really well. He also plays with a certain carefree attitude. He's someone who's had a long career now, made a lot of money, had some ups and downs. I don't think he doesn't feel like he needs to win a major. I think that's a really important thing as well. He doesn't put the pressure on himself. He wants to win, obviously, he wants to play well, but you get the sense that he's not going to lose sleep if he doesn't. And that kind of attitude might suit him well this week. And of course, he can play brilliantly when he's on. So I think Casey will do well this week. And my final pick, number 6, and I did mention him in a previous topic, is Hideki Matsuyama, who we're always waiting to be that guy, to win that major for Japan. And he's been ticking along, playing some decent golf of late. Hasn't won, but he's just there, ticking around. He put some good scores together, some good rounds. And stats-wise, great from 100 yards and in, which I think will be important this week. He's great off the tee. It's a lot of fairways. So if he can just find that touch on the greens and find that little extra gear when he has to, I think he will play well this week and potentially finish in the top 10. And you never know, as we saw back in 2006, if you finish well and get in that top 10, guys might fall apart at the end, and suddenly you could be the US Open champion unexpectedly. So those are my 6. I've got Dustin Johnson, John Ram, Xander Schauffele, Webb Simpson, Hideki Matsuyama, and Paul Casey. Over to you, Carlos.
All right. So you talked about Hideki Matsuyama. I'm usually picking him, not today. Sorry, Hideki. I'm not with you. I'm leaving out Rory McIlroy too. Sorry, Rory. I don't think you're sleeping every night yet. JT, sorry, man. I don't think you're going to be there. Sorry about your guy. Colin Morikawa is not going to win this week. But I'm going to start with Xander Schauffele. I mean, he definitely, fresh off posting that, like you mentioned, the 72-hole score, low score, and he's like 2 weeks ago. He now owns top 10s in 6 of his 12 career major championships starts. So, I mean, he proves he's one of the most consistent players in the biggest situations. That is exactly what the U.S. Open is about. And there's somebody that definitely has to go out there and play out for this, okay? And that's Xander Schauffele. I have to give it to him. Now, another player that you might be surprised, but I think Tommy Fleetwood, he struggled to get to the engine after the season started. But because he sat out the first 6 tournaments after the restart and has played in just 5 events since. But hey, he showed major signs of life last week in the U.S. Open tune-up, finishing T3rd at the Europeans Portugal Masters. You know, that combined with top 5 finishes in 2 of his last 3 U.S. Opens. Man, I got to go with him. He has to be primed to go for a big, big outing right now. Another player, Webb Simpson. I keep going at him. I mean, if you have to go with somebody here, you have to go with an accurate player. That's him. I mean, Simpson might be your best shot at that because he finished in the top 20 in driving accuracy and during this season. And he's one of 4 who I believe has a chance of contending this week. And he won in 2012. He has finished 10th and 16th the last 2 years. So history tells you that he's about to creep up that leaderboard again if you're a betting guy. Now the other guys, shockers. It's going to be DJ, of course. I mean, he's the favorite he's off his player of the year, winning the FedEx Cup. He's plays well, and he has a very good record there in the big Northeast courses. And of course, he's played well in U.S. Opens before. So, hey, you have to pick him. But to me, the winner of this tournament is going to be John Ram. I mean, are we finally past the point where observers still believe about his emotional outbursts, his relative inexperience that should prohibit him from being one of the top picks to win into a major championship? It should be. I mean, this guy owns immense talent. You guys have talked about his victories this summer at the Memorial Tournament and BMW Championship. Easily, hands down, the 2 most difficult setups since the PGA Tour's restart. And he was also T3 last year at Pebble Beach. Just another sign pointing towards the impending title contention. So I'm going to go for him. I mean, there are about 5 to 6 players who have played the best in the past few months, but I'll take Ram to be the best of the best this week. So any final thoughts, Fred, before we close the U.S. Open?
No, just real quick, some really great pairings. You touched on them a little bit. Hideki is with Patrick Reed and Jordan Spieth. There's a guy we haven't talked about. Boy, would this be a comeback of all comebacks if he could have a great week and end up winning. Colin Morikawa is with Justin Thomas and Tiger Woods. Great pairing for all 3 of those guys. They should have a lot of fun playing together. Your guy Webb Simpson you talked about is with Sergio and with Jay Day. Rory is with Adam Scott and Justin Rose. That's a nice pairing for all 3 of those guys. Ian Poulter is with Patrick Cantley and Steve Stricker. And then you've got on Thursday off 1 in the afternoon wave. You've got DeChambeau with DJ and also with Finau. You mentioned that. Phil is playing with Casey and with John Rahm. That should be a really fun group to watch right there. And then Ricky Fowler, we haven't said anything about Ricky. Would this be something that he could slip up and finally break through and get his major? along with Matt Wolf and Victor Hovland, all the Oklahoma State guys. So a lot of good pairings there to watch, guys. Can't wait for it to start on Thursday.
Kieran, final words on the U.S. Open.
Yeah, it's obviously a different feel to the US Open this year, obviously having no fans. And indeed, I think a big miss is actually, as you touched on, Carlos, earlier at the start of the preview, is actually not having the qualifying, which is such a massive part of the US Open every year, having the 9,000 guys trying to qualify for the Open and all across the world. And I know they've tried their best to replicate that field by getting the amateurs in, getting the club pros in, and trying to create an international field. They've done their best to create that diverse field, but it just isn't quite the same as having guys who have had to work their way to get into the event, even some of the best players in the world. So I love that element to the US Open. It is the most open of events in golf, but unfortunately this year it's not quite the same due to circumstances. But I think in terms of the golf course we have here, the setup, the history of the venue, the way it's going to play, this is going to be a real throwback US Open to what the US Open has been about for so long. If you love that sort of thing, this is going to be a great week for you. If not, then, I'm not a massive fan of that necessarily, but I think once a year, something to embrace. It's a different kind of challenge. It is fascinating to watch these guys tested mentally, tested psychologically, and indeed, Carlos, this US Open will be a psychological test like no other.
Coined, we're going to do that, and we're going to say it now, promote it as your newly coined phrase. That's how we're going to promote it this week. So Kieran Clark, thank you for that incredible phrase now. So now let's move to the final pods, Fred. The Masters are yielding to the NFL. Wow, what is going on?
Well, normally, as we know, the Masters is in April and finishes just before sunset at around 7 p.m. Well, because this year's Masters will be held in November and the final round will still be held on Sunday, it has to compete with the almighty NFL on Sunday afternoon. Thus, the final round will conclude at approximately 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. So CBS can get to the NFL game immediately after the green jacket is awarded. I'll bet Fred Ridley and the membership were not too pleased to have to accede to the NFL. Bobby Jones and Clifford Roberts are probably turning over in their graves. Would Billy Payne or Hootie Johnson yield to the NFL? I'm not so sure, guys. That should be a little different seeing the Butler cabin at 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday getting the green jacket.
Definitely will be weird, but hey, that's how signs of the pandemic and having to be postponed are right now. So Kieran, how about Mark Alcavecchia?
Yes, we mentioned, Carlos, the pandemic, and obviously that's just upended so much of daily life and events and everything this year. It's in a year that none of us will ever forget, not necessarily for good reasons. And it's touched one of golf's champions, Mark Calcavecchia, the 1989 Open winner at Royal Troon. He tested positive for COVID-19 just over a week ago. While out on the trail of the Champions Tour, he tends to drive around in this motorhome with his wife Brenda, and he tested positive there. So he drove 1,800 miles home from the Stanford International event, which he withdrew from, back to his home in South Florida. And he was interviewed by Golf Week, and he described how he felt, and he said it wasn't much fun at all. He got home driving in 3.5 days, but when he got home, everything fell apart, he says. He felt extremely unwell. All different kinds of symptoms have hit him at once. So as far as he was concerned, that it's very real and it's very serious, and when you get it, you certainly notice it. So his caddy, Troy Martin, his wife, Mary, were members of an event, and they went to a clinic there in Nebraska, and they also tested positive for COVID. So that might have been where Mark picked it up. Obviously, we're trying to determine that trail, see where it could lead to. But he is, recovering. But I noticed an update today on Twitter from his wife Brenda, who tweeted earlier today that he actually went into hospital for some tests yesterday because he wasn't feeling any better. And while he described in the interview the other day that he felt he'd go over the worst of it, he hadn't quite been able to get rid of it. And they have now determined that he has pneumonia. So he now has medication that will hopefully get him on the mend. So obviously very serious stuff. Mark Kalkovec is 60 years of age. That places him just about in one of the worst, at-risk categories. And I believe he has sleep apnea as well. So he suffers from kind of respiratory problems in some respects in life. And obviously if you have that in your background, then this virus can be even more serious for you. So hopefully, we wish him all the best. Hopefully he recovers fully very soon and gets back to full health. And so hopefully getting to the hospital and getting tested and getting checked out and getting the medication, hopefully that's been caught early and with a bit of rest. And in a few weeks' time, he'll be back to himself. So obviously very serious, and it just underlines that this COVID thing's real, and we all have to try and get on with our lives, but it's not something you want to catch, that's for sure, because certainly in some cases it can be very, very serious indeed. So hopefully, Mark, this is going to be the worst that we'll get for him, and he'll be back to full health very soon.
And we wish him a speedy recovery and everything will be back to normal for him and his family. Now to close, the Symetra Tour announced a new addition to the 2020 schedule because the Mission Inn Resort and Country Club in Hawaii in the Hills, Florida, will host the inaugural Mission Inn Resort and Club Championship presented by the Insurance of America from October 15th to the 17th. And it's going to be a full field of competitors, 54-stroke play format, and this club, I mean, they're gonna play it at the El Campeon, which means El Champion course. And they have hosted more than 20 NCAA championships to its 2 courses, as well as numerous US Open and US Amateur qualifiers. So that's a great course and a great news that Symetra Tour is picking up another tournament, at least for this tournament, for this year. Fred, any final words before we close the show?
Nope, just don't forget to check out Ohio Golf Journal and Michigan Golf Journal for great travel news and information. Plus, watch Back 9 Report TV on Roku and YouTube, guys. That's all I got for you.
Kieran, thank you for joining us. I mean, it's incredible always to have you. Any final words before I close the show?
No, as always, pleasure to be on the show, spend the time with you guys talking about the US Open and obviously many other issues too. As I say, I think this US Open is going to leave us hopefully with some great storylines at the weekend, and hopefully you guys next Tuesday when you reconvene will have a fantastic event to recap. So hopefully US Open delivers on the promise, because it has all the potential to be an all-time classic. So let's hope we get that. I think this year we deserve a real classic, memorable US Open.
Real quick, one last question, quick to each one of you. Fred, final score for the winner of the US Open.
I'm guessing about 4 or 5 over, so 284, 285.
Kieran, what you think?
I believe these guys are better than +8. So I think someone will finish at +3, and that will be the winning score.
Okay, I'm going to go right in the middle of both of you. I'm going to go +4. So we'll see next Tuesday who got it right. But anyway, Back Niners, that wraps up another week of the Back Nine Report. Thank you for joining us. It's always our pleasure to bring you the latest on the world of golf. Don't forget to see us again next week on YouTube, or if you missed it, hey, you can check out the audio version on iTunes or TuneIn. And if you haven't done so, hey, follow the show on Twitter. Our ID is at Back9 Report with the number 9 in the middle. My name is Carlos Torres, along with Altvater and Kieran Clark. We wish you to be happy, be blessed, and enjoy the great game of golf. Happy golfing, everybody.
See you on the Back 9.
Until next time.